Just let me know when I can bring yours.
Okay.
Yes. Hurry up.
This. They probably say video deposition from another proceeding, so they know it's not us questioning
We'll figure that out.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. His testimony will be presented by video deposition from another proceeding. Anything else? Is that fine? I don't know that we have the date.
May 26, 2021 is the date of the deposition.
Okay.
Can we call it a civil proceeding as opposed to a criminal proceeding?
Do you want to do that? I don't know. I have no idea what they think about any of this.
Let's throw money.
Oh, it's working.
That's,
If you want, if you think it should be,
I don't know if any of them would really know the difference anyways.
I'd say just another proceeding.
Another proceeding. That's fine.
They know he's not available to you or here.
okay. And you're fine with this, the way it's written? Okay.
Well, let me, I didn't
Yeah,
see
go
the
ahead,
top
take a look.
part, so-
Okay, good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, anything to report from the break?
May I approach?
You may. Anyone else have anything to report? All right, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I want to read an instruction to you, so if you'll just pay close attention. You shall draw no inference from the fact that John Mattingly did not testify. He was unavailable to either party. You shall draw no inference from the fact that Miles Cosgrove did not testify in person. He was not available to either party. His testimony will be presented by video deposition from another proceeding, which was conducted on May 26 of 2021. He was under oath at that time. All right.
And, Your Honor, they're broken up into the clips that you permitted, so I will play one, play another, and play another. They are not all the way through.
Okay. And you understand that what I sent you was to be excluded, so,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
Yes, ma'am. Morning. Good morning. Mr. Cosgrove, my name's Steve Romines. Mr. Moore and I represent Kenny Walker in this case. You ever done a deposition?
No.
Okay. Sworn testimony like you've testified in court before, correct?
Yes.
Only difference is that we don't have a judge here and court reporter's taking it down rather than video. Okay? Now, by it not being on video, head nods, uh-uhs are harder for the court reporter to understand, so answer the questions verbally with yes, no, explain however you want to do it, okay?
I understand.
If anything I ask you that you don't understand, just ask me to rephrase it, okay?
Yes.
We ever had a case together?
I think so.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yes.
All right, could you please state your name for the record and spell it for the court reporter?
It is Miles Cosgrove, Miles with a Y, M-Y-L-E-S, Cosgrove, C-O-S-G-R-O-V-E.
And let's go off the record. All right, what's your current employment, Mr. Cosgrove?
I'm not employed right now.
Okay. How long were you with LMPD?
Approximately 15 years.
Okay. In various different roles?
Correct.
Okay. What are the SOPs? Just what
are they
generally
general-
speaking,
they
what's
are-
SOPs?
Rules and regulations, operating procedures.
That you're supposed to follow?
Correct.
Are you required to be familiar with them?
Yes.
And are you ever tested or certified on them?
You're not tested on them, no, you are you sign off on them as they're updated throughout the year.
When, going into March 12th of 2020, when would have been the last time you personally reviewed the SOPs?
I don't know. SOPs are, you are given your SOPs in the academy as all of them, and then throughout your career, you are given SOP updates and familiarization throughout your career. So there is no review time per se.
When would be the last time that you would have reviewed an SOP about search warrant, execution of search warrants?
I don't know that answer.
Same with body cams, when the last time you would have reviewed one of those?
Correct, I wouldn't know that.
Okay. Now, when is it your understanding that it's permissible to deviate from the SOPs?
Well, SOPs are most of them are a generalization of what you should and shouldn't do. I can't really give you an exact example, but there are times when you need to deviate from set rules and regulations. It could be for exigent circumstances, it could be for something that you or the department isn't familiar with, something that has never happened before. It would have to be something that hadn't been thought of before,
Okay.
for the most part.
So, and exigent circumstances, and that could include public safety or officer safety.
Correct, yes.
All right, and then something that's not covered by them.
Correct,
Other than that, though, you're supposed to follow them.
yes.
Had you ever worked with PBI prior to March 12th of 2020?
No, sir.
So this was the first time, had you worked with any of the officers in PBI?
Yes, PBI was a new unit, so yes, I had worked with them in other aspects prior
To it becoming PBI?
to PBI, correct.
Okay. Who had you worked with?
Sergeant Kyle Meany, Mike Campbell, and Josh James. That's it.
But once they became PBI, you had never worked with that specific unit.
Correct.
What was your unit at the time on March 12th of 2020?
I'd only been in that unit for a few months. What the heck was it? Was called
CID?
CID, Criminal Interdiction Unit. Yeah. That's narcotics. That was the new name of narcotics.
Okay, the new name of narcotics was CID?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Or was it a division of narcotics as a whole?
Shoot, I don't remember.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I'd only been in the new transition for a few months, so I wasn't concentrating on names.
Okay. What what jobs were you primarily performing in March of 2020?
Mid-level drug dealers, complaints, mid to low-level complaints and drug dealers.
Okay. Not parcels or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Now, did you have any role in the investigation of Jamarcus Glover?
No, I didn't have any role.
Did you have any idea who Jamarcus Glover was
No, I didn't.
until you went to the briefing that night?
I wouldn't say I knew who he was at the briefing. I was just told of the name and whatnot. So to who he was, no. The name, yes.
So had no role in the investigation at all?
Correct, no role.
No role in the preparation of the search warrant?
Correct, no role.
No role in the threat matrix?
Correct, no role in that either.
You ever see it?
That threat matrix, no. I have seen the threat matrix. before, but
Yeah.
not that evening's.
For
direct
Springfield.
nature. Correct, I have not seen that one.
Okay, so didn't see it before the search warrant
Correct,
was executed, didn't see it at the briefing,
correct,
never saw it any time.
correct.
Did you have any idea who Breonna Taylor was?
No,
Did you have any idea who Janiyah Palmer was?
no,
That she lived at that address that you guys were executing a search warrant on?
no,
What about who Kenny Walker was? Did you have any idea who he was?
no, I had no idea who any of those folks were.
Had any idea that Kenny Walker was at the residence that you guys were executing a search warrant on?
No,
Did you have any idea if Jamarcus Glover was actually there, going to be there or not?
no, no,
So it sounds like you didn't really know anything about what was going on at 303 Springfield when you guys went to execute this search warrant.
no, I knew what was happening, or I knew the plan, but I did not know the occupants or the targets that we were going after, if that makes sense.
Okay. What is a surveillance officer's job?
A surveillance officer's job is to report, obviously, what they surveil or what they see to parties that have an interest in what we're doing.
So-
They need to report who, what, when, where, to the folks that need the information in a timely manner.
So if you're executing a search warrant and you have a surveillance officer observing the location,
Mhm.
one of the things one of their jobs is to convey the information timely to the people executing the search warrant
Yes.
of who's there.
Well, they may not know who is there, but bodies that are there, correct?
If not the actual persons, but if 5 people are there, they're supposed to convey that to you.
Correct.
If 1 person's there, they're supposed to convey that to you.
Yes,
If people leave, they're supposed to convey that to you.
yes.
And people arrive, they're supposed to convey that.
Correct.
Okay. Was any of that information ever conveyed to you or the individuals executing the search warrant?
I was told that there was one individual at the apartment, which would have been the female, Breonna Taylor.
And as we learned,
It was described, I remember it as a heavy-set female as at the apartment.
okay, and that, you learned that in the briefing,
Correct.
and as we now know, there was more than one person there
Yes,
and had arrived that evening.
at some point, yes.
But that was never conveyed by the surveillance officer who was watching the location.
Correct.
Uh,
Not to me, anyways, but yes.
Well, and as you, one of the people executing this search warrant, if that information is conveyed to anyone on the team, it should be conveyed to everyone executing a search warrant.
Yes, it should, immediately, yes.
Because executing a search warrant really is one of the most dangerous things that law enforcement can do.
It is inherently dangerous, yes.
It's inherently
Yes.
dangerous. And if you don't have proper intel, it's even more dangerous.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And if you don't know who's in the location, it's even more dangerous.
Yes,
If you don't have an accurate threat matrix, it's even more dangerous.
yes,
If it's not planned properly, it's even more dangerous.
yes,
And if you have a combination of multiple factors, such as we just mentioned, poor planning, poor threat matrix, poor intelligence, poor surveillance, that makes it even more dangerous.
I would say poor planning and all those things that you listed make it inherently dangerous. I'm not agreeing that that evening those facts were poorly planned and whatnot.
And
But
we'll-
yes,
We'll cover that.
but factors that are overlooked for any plan can make it more dangerous, yes.
So if certain, you don't have to concede at this point that these things happen, we'll just talk about it. If surveillance is improperly performed or poorly done, that makes it more dangerous.
Yes,
If intelligence is improperly performed and poorly done, that makes it more dangerous.
yes it does.
If the planning of the actual stack and raid is improperly or poorly done, that makes it more dangerous.
Yes,
If the threat matrix is inaccurate or improperly done, that makes it more dangerous. Yes. And you combine all of these various factors that make something that's inherently dangerous even more dangerous, it gets to be pretty foreseeable that something bad could happen, doesn't it? You can answer.
If you're overlooking dangerous factors that you're saying, yes, it would continue to exponentially make what you're doing more dangerous.
And there comes a point when if you continue to stack one thing after another, that it becomes likely that something bad's gonna happen. Or definitely foreseeable.
It would compound an error, yes.
Now, you've indicated that you were told to assist in the execution of this search warrant.
Correct. I volunteered to assist in working that night, and I was assigned a task.
Okay. Now, did you volunteer via email or sign up, or how did that work?
I don't remember exactly, but it would have been one of those ways.
Okay. Now, you previously indicated in your interview with PIU that all of CID was told to assist.
Well, I believe that's all on overtime. They can't make you work overtime, so that may have been a mischaracterization, but they.
You can start right there, just to see if that refreshes your recollection, or you can correct it, or how you want to do it. 1:30.
Okay, my fault. Well, this is saying that I was told to go to the roll call room, not that I was told to assist in the actual voluntary of the incident.
So you were not told to assist in the execution of this search warrant, you volunteered?
Correct, yes, sir.
All right. Okay, and let's just cover exactly what you said in your interview. You started at approximately.
Sorry, what are we reading from?
Here's an interview from PIU. Starting at line 132, so approximately.
So at approximately 10 o'clock, we were told to, all of the narcotics or CID was told to meet in the roll call room to assist unintelligible unit with several. We were, sorry. With unit with several warrants that they were briefing.
Now, is that what is in your interview?
Correct. I'm saying that I was told to go to the roll call room to participate in the brief.
Okay, so you weren't told to assist the unintelligible unit. Presumably that's PBI.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. You say, so at approximately 10 o'clock, we were told all of the narcotics or CID was told to meet in the roll call room to assist the unit with several warrants that they were briefing.
Correct. So I'm in an office space, and I'm being told to go to a briefing room. I'm being told to move from one location to another location to attend the brief.
So you weren't told to assist in the execution of these warrants, you were just told to go to the briefing room?
Correct.
All right. Now, how did you volunteer to assist in the execution of these warrants?
I don't remember exactly, but it's typically email or verbal, voluntary, or through phone call.
And who conducted the briefing?
I'm really bad with names. So the female officer, Kelly Hanna, and Wes Barton were the folks that I remember as having a speaking role in the briefing room.
So you don't recall Josh James conducting the briefing?
Correct, I don't.
You recall anybody else speaking at the briefing?
No.
What was covered at the briefing?
It's a big question. They're covering all the locations we're going to, they're covering the targets, they're covering individual unit responsibilities, they're covering timelines.
Did they cover who was in charge?
Of the entire brief, I don't remember that. I know they would, on your stack, it is covered who's in charge, or on your particular assignment.
Okay, who was in charge of your particular assignment?
Lieutenant Sean Hoover.
Okay. Is that reflected in the briefing on the whiteboard?
I'm not sure. I would think so, as the order of, I'd have to look at that photograph, I'm not sure.
I'll show you in just a minute. We'll go down here to the lead detective's obligations. What does that indicate?
2631 lead detective. Prior to serving the search warrant, the lead detective may request assistance from the tactical operations team with videotaping the location unless exigent circumstances exist. The lead detective is also responsible for the following.
Keep going.
Number 1, notification of a supervisor. 2, completion of the search warrant matrix or risk assessment matrix. Number 3, completion of the search warrant checklist. Number 4, completion of completion of an operation plan. 5, securing the approval of the operation plan. 6, entering pertinent information about the search warrant location in the HIDTA, HIDTA, which is HIDTA deconfliction software. And 7, being present at the pre-service briefing.
Okay. Now, to your understanding, who is the lead detective in this case?
PBI Josh James.
Okay. And he was not present at the pre-service briefing, correct?
I don't remember him being there, correct?
Okay. Are you aware if the information was entered into the, regarding the search warrant location, entered into the HIDTA deconfliction software?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Are you aware of the operation plan being approved by a supervisor?
The operations plan could be construed as the whiteboard. The operations plan, even for me, would have been the whiteboard, and there are commanders there. So I would say yes, that is, from how I'm looking at it, yes, that has been approved.
Are you aware of a requirement of a written operations plan?
Yes, there is a requirement for a written document.
And that wasn't done, was it?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So the requirement for the SOPs requires a written operations plan to be done before a search warrant is executed, correct?
Correct. But folks in the briefing are not, it's not pertinent information that you're given.
Okay. My question was, the standard operating procedures for the execution of a search warrant, which we've established is inherently dangerous, requires a written operations plan.
Yes, it does.
And that was not performed, was it?
I don't know.
You never
All
saw
I
it.
know is, correct, all I saw was the whiteboard information.
And according to both narcotics as well as the general LMPD's SOP, writing it on a whiteboard is not permitted as a substitute for a written operations plan, is it?
That's a yes and no question for me, because you may have a warrant that needs to be done quickly. So your operations plan may be written on the windshield of a car with a marker. And then later on, you go back and you type up your your document per se. But I don't know if that was done that evening.
Okay, well, do you have any reason to believe that a search warrant that contained information from January 16th, 2020, and was executed on March 13th of 2020 had to be done immediately?
No, yes, that should have been done within that time frame.
It should have been done, it's required to be done. To your knowledge, it wasn't done.
Correct, I don't know if it was done, yes.
And while we're talking about it, we'll look at the general LMPD's preparation for search warrant. And I've highlighted for you there. Yeah.
It's gonna be exhibits.
They will be. This will be exhibit 2. I know. Narcotics is one.
Do copies of that?
Yep. What does that indicate?
8-1,
He actually looking at.
He is looking at Standard Operating Procedure, SOP 8.1, search warrants. And he's looking specifically at 8.1.17, preparation for search warrant execution. Go ahead, you read it.
8.1.17, preparation for search warrant execution. The highlighted area, the lead officer will complete a search warrant operation plan form LMPD 050025. Prior to the warrant service, the on-scene commander will act as the incident commander for service of the search warrant, and the incident command system will be implemented and followed. The IC incident commander will conduct a briefing with all search team personnel. This briefing will include 1, a review of the operations and procedures that the search personnel will follow. 2, analysis of conditions at the premises utilizing maps, charts, diagrams, appropriate tactics and equipment that are being used in the event of forced entry, a pre-planned hospital route.
Okay. Now, this is, again, these can be disregarded under exigent circumstances or public safety,
Yes.
right?
Well, no. Those all need to be done in some form. If you don't do those things, then in some form they have to be done prior to doing anything, exigent circumstances or not.
Okay, and the search warrant operations plan that is required by policy has an actual specific form, doesn't it?
Yes, the operations plan, yes, has a tracking or a form number, yes.
Yeah. Because, again, we're talking about something that is inherently dangerous.
Correct.
And there are several policies and procedures put in place to try to make it less dangerous.
Yes,
And one of those is the search warrant operations plan.
yes,
And a specific form that has to be filled out before a search warrant is executed.
typically, yes, that form would be filled out unless there were mitigating circumstances that wouldn't allow it for the time.
Yeah, exigent circumstances or public safety.
Correct.
And again, none of those exist in this search warrant, do they?
I don't have knowledge of that.
So we know that wasn't performed, the search warrant operations plan. The on-scene commander will act as incident commander. Who's that?
The on-scene commander typically is the first person on scene. For a warrant, for a search warrant, it would be the person with the most, it would be the person who's whose warrant it is, because they have the most information.
Okay, and that would be Josh Jennings.
Not necessarily. Someone who is giving the briefing may have as much information that John had, that
James has.
that James has.
Okay,
correct.
now, we just covered in the narcotics SOPs, the lead detective, who is James,
Correct.
is required to be at the briefing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That's what that says, yes. There are mitigating circumstances. His supervisor could have approved it, but typically a lead detective, someone who has intimate knowledge with what you're about to do, typically gives a brief.
Well,
And I, again, may be incorrect that he was in there or not.
so you think he might have been there?
There was a lot of people in there.
Okay. You just don't
I just
recall seeing
I
him?
don't recall him being in there, correct?
And you don't recall him doing the brief?
Correct.
However, again, under the Narcotics Division's own internal policies, the lead detective is required to be present at the brief.
According to that, yes.
Okay. Well, this is the Narcotics Division's own policies, isn't it?
Yes, but we agreed earlier that policies can be changed for certain reasons. And again, if Josh had something that had to be done and other individuals have that same intimate knowledge of what's happening, it would be appropriate for them to give information to the folks in the briefing room.
So if there's a public safety issue that Josh is dealing with, or there's exigent circumstances that require him to not be present, then obviously the SOP can be ignored.
I would object to this entire line of questioning. SOPs and the narcotics documents speak for themselves. This witness has already testified that he had no role in planning, preparing this warrant. Calls for speculation. Other witnesses with the knowledge, this witness doesn't have it.
Objection noted. All right, you will, is it your testimony that even without exigent circumstances or public safety issues, that this requirement that the lead detective be present at the briefing can be ignored?
Yes, it can be. There are other reasons that would have to be between that unit and those supervisors on why individuals aren't there.
What are those other reasons?
Same objection. Just doesn't have his knowledge.
No, I mean, if you.
What are other
Yeah,
reasons?
you think there's other reasons? What are they?
There could be vital intelligence that he needs to convey to other people. There could be other intelligence that he needs to report to other, like SWAT, for instance. Maybe he has to tell other units very vital, important information. I can come up with scenarios, but I don't really know the answer to that question.
There are none listed in any of the SOPs other than exigent circumstances and public safety. You can't just ignore them because you want to, can you?
No, correct.
And and again, as we established earlier, they are put in place for specific reasons,
Yes.
and they are best practices.
Yes.
And one of the reasons there are so many SOPs concerning the execution of search warrants is because it's inherently dangerous.
Yes, it is.
And the SOPs are designed to make it as safe as possible.
Correct.
And when they are ignored or disregarded, it becomes less safe.
Yes.
Now, as we just covered with this document here, okay, which is the LMPD's SOPs, okay, that 8.117.
I don't have that. Okay, I got you.
Preparation for search warrant. 8.1.17.
Credibility.
0.17.
I got you.
There you go.
Field operations, preparation.
Preparation for search warrant. In the first paragraph, what is the last sentence in the first paragraph?
The lead officer will complete a search warrant operations plan, form number 05002.
And as we just covered, Josh James was the lead officer, to your understanding.
Correct.
And there is a specific search warrant operations plan form that LMPD has prepared.
Yes.
And it's required, there's nothing in this SOP that says we'll complete a search warrant operations plan form if he so chooses, or at his discretion. It's required, isn't it?
Yes.
And it, to your knowledge, it was not done in this case.
I don't know if it was done or if it wasn't done or when it was done. Correct.
You never saw one.
Correct.
And then the next paragraph, prior to the warrant service, the on-scene commander will act as incident commander. And we just talked about, your understanding would be that would be Josh or that would be Hoover?
So prior to the search warrant, the on-scene commander will act as the incident commander for service of the search warrant, and the incident command center will be implemented. So prior to the search warrant, we are in the office. So the on-scene commander, the incident commander would be Josh J, or whoever is giving the briefing.
Okay.
Whoever I'm being told is in charge of these warrants.
Okay. The IC will conduct a briefing with search team personnel. The briefing will include a review of operations and procedures that the search personnel will follow.
Correct.
Did that occur?
Yes, there was a briefing, and there is a plan that is discussed in the briefing.
What was the plan discussed?
That's a really big question, because there's multiple locations, so
I'm talking about on your team.
which part of the plan, like the entire
Yeah,
plan?
how you're going to make entry, if entry's required, who's carrying the ram, who's first, who's got the ballistic shield, all these things. What
That-
was covered?
Part of that was covered in the briefing room, and then part of that was covered in the parking lot prior to going to the location.
Okay, which part was covered in the briefing room?
Who would be there, the who, what, when, where, and why. The particular jobs, like the VO job, the administrative jobs that we're gonna do. Who is in charge.
And who was in charge? Who did they say was in charge?
Lieutenant Hoover is the highest ranking person there, so he would be in charge.
Okay. Now, was that changed during the course of the briefing?
Of who was in charge?
Uh-huh.
No.
And you indicated what's covered is the who, what, when, where, and why.
Correct.
What was the what?
The what would be the location or what we're looking for.
Okay.
That's just a generality that I'm saying. You want as much information as you can before you leave that room.
Now would be who's there, who all's there,
Correct.
layout of the place.
Yes, you'd want all intelligence that the briefing team has conveyed to you prior to you leaving that room.
And that would be valid, legitimate intelligence, not stuff that's incorrect.
Correct. Yes, you would not want incorrect information.
Because that makes it even more dangerous. Having no intelligence is not as bad as having incorrect intelligence.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And as we learn in this case, believing there's one female there, when that's the intelligence you're given, becomes even more dangerous when you subsequently find out that there's another male there.
Incorrect intelligence is dangerous. Multiple parties at a residence exponentially increase the danger.
And again, you guys did not understand or were not advised that there were multiple parties there, did you?
Correct.
And not having that information made this situation more dangerous.
Yes, it can.
It did in this case, didn't it?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3, which is a picture of the whiteboard. Yeah. Okay. Now, do you see Springfield on that?
Yes,
Okay, and you indicated, no, I'm not done yet, I'm gonna ask you some more questions about that. Who is listed under Springfield?
Sergeant Mattingly, Mike Campbell, Nobles, I'm not sure how to say this name, but Dorr, James King, Cosgrove, Hankison, and Franklin, who is a dog.
Okay.
Or what is it?
Now, you indicated that you all were advised that Hoover was the incident commander.
Correct.
Sure. Sorry. Hoover was the incident commander. And then, and also, I asked you, was the board changed over the course of the briefing? You indicated no, not to your knowledge. Hoover's not on Exhibit 3, is he?
Correct. I don't know when this was taken though. But no, he is not on this picture, or in this picture.
And Josh Dorr, didn't go to the scene, did he?
Correct.
And Colin King didn't go to the scene, did he?
Correct.
So the search warrant operations plan, or whatever this is supposed to be on the board, isn't even accurate, is it?
Objection to the question.
It's not accurate, is it?
Correct. Those individuals did not go with us.
Okay. So, and even if this is the information contained in the briefing, what's on this board, again, we're operating on stuff that's not correct.
Well, search warrants and police work it's flexible. It's always changing. But these folks were not at the location.
Okay.
So it is
It's not accurate.
it is not accurate.
Okay. And I'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 4, which is a different picture of the same board. Now, what do you see that's different about it? Sure.
It is different in that. Then in that Lieutenant Hoover has been added to the bottom. And that's it. Just Lieutenant Hoover's been added to the bottom.
Okay. Has Noble's name been changed?
There's no K in Nobles on this picture here, or on this picture here.
Yeah. Exhibit 3, Nobles was spelled with a K, and Exhibit 4, Nobles was spelled with an N.
Correct.
Okay, so at some point in time, somebody made changes to these whiteboard that we're using as a search warrant operations plan.
Again, police work is very flexible. I don't know if I've ever been to a briefing where they have not changed the whiteboard as they're giving the brief for whatever reason.
Is the search warrant operations plan form, LMPD 050025, allowed to be changed whenever?
I don't know.
And we don't know if it was in this case or not because we've never seen one, have we?
Correct.
And there's no exemption, as we covered already, for writing on the whiteboard being a replacement for the search warrant operations plan, is there?
The operations plan needs to be complete at some point.
And not completing it makes the situation more dangerous.
The operations plan, this is my operations plan. When I go to the briefing, this is my operations plan.
Okay. Does any of this, either one of these pictures, reflect who's on the ram?
No.
Does it reflect where the people are in the stack?
No, this is just a list that is put on the board, and the incident commander or someone in this group will, you guys will have your side brief, because you may not know the strengths and weaknesses of each team member until you have your parking lot meeting, or what I call a parking lot meeting.
Is that always done? Parking lot meeting?
To some extent, yes, yes. You may want to walk through or rehearse or double check equipment. So yes, in some form.
Was there any walkthrough done in the parking lot in this case?
We had a meeting, for lack of a better word, in the church parking lot off of, in the church
St.
parking
Andrew's
lot.
Church.
St. Andrew's Church area. So yes, we had a parking lot brief.
Was there a walkthrough done?
No, and when I mean walkthrough, I'm meaning, you know, you're making sure you got your, if you have the RAM, well then you should have it in your hand. Like an equipment check of familiarization, you make sure that everybody that's supposed to be on your team is with you in this parking lot. You're like kind of walking through what's happening and who's with you.
And do you discuss who's where in the stack as you're going in?
Yes, those assignments would be determined after this briefing with the folks you're working with.
Okay, is that where everybody's role in the entry of the search warrant covered in the briefing that was done in this case at CID, or in your parking lot meeting?
It could be, but I remember it as our role was occurring in the parking lots.
Okay, so it was not covered in the briefing?
I don't believe it was, no.
Okay, so it was just going to be up to you guys when you have your second meeting to determine who does what, everyone's role?
Correct.
Okay. Now's the time.
Off the record at 10:57. Back in the record at 11:04.
I think where we stopped, we were talking about the briefing at headquarters versus, and we'll use the phrase parking lot briefing, and what's covered in each of them. And I'll show you again, you've got in front of you the LMPD's SOPs. Go to 8.1.17.
Okay.
And we covered the lead officer will complete a search warrant operations plan, which wasn't done. The on-scene commander will act as the incident commander for the service of the search warrant. And the incident command system will be implemented and followed. What is that?
The incident command system is a command and control. So typically it's the first person on scene who is in charge, and then as more folks arrive, that command structure starts to fluctuate based on either experience or rank.
Okay, so is that not determined at the briefing, or who's in charge of a search warrant execution? Or is it just whoever the next highest ranking guy is?
Can you say that again?
Okay, what I'm trying to determine is, was the incident commander determined when you all left the briefing room, or did you all determine that in the parking lot?
No, that is predetermined based on Lieutenant Hoover's rank.
Okay, so he was the incident commander.
Yes.
All right. And it says, if you keep reading there on the second paragraph, the IC will conduct a briefing with search team personnel.
Correct.
Now, that would be Lieutenant Hoover.
Yes.
Did he conduct the parking lot briefing?
Yes. A parking lot briefing is conducted by someone who is has rank and experience. A parking lot briefing is where you get your assignments and then you talk it through.
Okay.
So yes, that was conducted.
And what assignment were you given? Were you given any assignment at the briefing at the station?
As I was assigned to the locations.
Right, but that's it.
Correct, yes.
Your role in the execution was never covered in that briefing.
At the station, correct.
Okay. Was anything else covered in the briefing at the station other than this is where you're going, this is who's going, and we're looking for dope or money or whatever?
Objection to formal question.
There's a lot of things explained. What are you referring to exactly?
What else was covered in the briefing at the station with the whiteboard?
It was covered that this would be a knock and announce warrant. It was covered that there would be a heavy-set female there. We were given the task of finding documents, not necessarily drugs. And I'm sure there are other things, but those are the ones that stand out.
Did you ever think to yourself, why are we going in at 12:30 at night looking for documents?
No, that is all. I'm being asked to assist. That planning is above me. That's predetermined.
That's not your role.
Correct.
Right? You're not allowed to question it.
I'm allowed to question it, yes, but that did not come up.
Have you, subsequent to this, wondered why were we going in at 12:30 at night looking for documents?
No, that's part of their planning logic, and I wasn't part of that and haven't been provided any documents as to why they decided to do that.
Do you have any reason why SWAT wasn't consulted?
SWAT was consulted. SWAT was consulted if SWAT was there at certain locations, but I was not part of that.
Do you believe SWAT was consulted on the Springfield warrant the night it was executed?
No, I didn't know if they had or hadn't.
Would that also be information that's not part of your job requirement in this case?
Correct.
Now, we'll keep going here of, the incident commander will conduct a briefing with all search team personnel. The briefing will include a review of operation and procedures that the search personnel will follow. Okay, now, I think you're saying that occurred in the parking lot. It did not occur at the briefing station.
That's how I remember it, yes.
Okay, what was covered?
Well, are you referring to Lieutenant Hoover, or is that what you're referring to?
Whoever the IC was that will conduct a briefing with all search team personnel.
Are you talking about in the office or in the parking lot?
Either one. Did they cover?
Yes, that was covered. Your task, yes.
Okay, the operation and procedure was covered at both the briefing, at the station, and in the parking lot, or just in the parking lot?
The operation, which is the whiteboard, is covered in the office, and then our operation is discussed in the parking lot.
The
So,
procedures
yes.
you're going to use to make entry was discussed in the parking lot?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and that's who's where,
Yes,
who has what equipment,
correct,
right? Whose job is to do everything.
correct.
Now, you're planning this out before you execute what you said is an inherently dangerous situation.
Yes.
Can you just change your mind? Once you're assigned a role, can you just say, nah, I don't want to do that, I want to do something different when you get there?
You cannot deviate from the plan. You can talk to folks and tell them why you may want to look at a different angle, but no, if you're given a task, you need to do that task.
Everybody has a job.
Correct.
And if people don't do their job, again, it becomes more dangerous for everybody.
Yes, problems can occur if you don't do any type of job.
Okay? And you all in the parking lot were all assigned a specific job.
Yes.
And what was yours?
My job was what I call perimeter or perimeter security. So folks call it different things, but I'm one of the perimeter individuals.
And that, you understood, that was your job to do.
Correct.
You're not responsible for the RAM.
Correct.
You're not responsible for making first entry.
Correct.
You're not responsible for ballistic shield.
Correct.
You're not responsible for backup of the person with the RAM.
No, that is incorrect. Police work is fluid.
Okay.
And if you see things that need to be corrected, you have a duty to correct them or to, let other folks know that there is something that needs to be corrected or dealt with.
we'll get that, that's what I'm asking is, there came a point in time when you realized that Nobles did not have backup,
Correct,
right? And that was much more important than you guarding the perimeter.
correct,
So you, at that point in time, realized, my job was here, but I need to change jobs because somebody has to back him up.
correct.
Now, presumably in the parking lot, somebody was assigned the job to back up Nobles.
Correct, presumably, yes.
Because, again, that's a very important part of this entire procedure.
Yes,
And whoever got that assignment wasn't doing it.
apparently, yes.
And you had to change, in the midst of it, change jobs, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I think whenever you're having to make decisions on the fly on something that's done like this, it makes it more dangerous.
I would say it makes it complicated.
And
Not
anytime,
necessarily dangerous, but it makes it a little bit more complicated.
changing a plan in midstream is complicated in itself, isn't it?
Well, the plan wasn't changed. A job was changed.
And who wasn't doing their job? Who was assigned to back up for the ramp?
I don't know.
So you were at the briefing. One of the important jobs is back up for the guy actually making entry. And you don't have any idea who was supposed to back him up.
Correct.
This is pretty poor planning in and of itself of the actual entry, isn't it? You can answer.
Not that I don't remember, so it very well could have been planned, but I just don't remember whose job that was.
You don't recall anybody being assigned back up for the guy with the ramp.
Correct.
Now, that is actually one of the procedures that has to be covered in the briefing, isn't it?
I would think so.
Along with who's got the ram, who goes in first, those type of things.
Yes.
Now, if you'll look at bullet point 2 of the briefing requirements.
An analysis of conditions at the premises utilizing maps and charts and diagrams when appropriate.
Now, did you have any idea the layout of the apartment?
No.
Okay. That would be information that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
If it's available, yes.
And again, do you know if it's available simply by calling the apartment complex and asking for a diagram?
Again, that's not my job to do that, so I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if an apartment person can provide us that information in that timely manner either.
Well, again, I'll show you Exhibit 5, which is
Yeah, what are you asking?
the layout of the apartment.
No, not that, I mean, the earlier document.
Yeah. SOP, L&TD's SOP preparation for search warrant, 8.1.17. Now, wasn't your job to obtain this, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever see one?
No.
Right? You are aware of anybody ever attempting to obtain one?
No.
And again, a scene diagram of where you're going is something that would be beneficial.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And would make again, this is part of the intelligence that you have, makes a dangerous situation less dangerous.
The more information that you have mitigates some dangers, yes.
And again, the requirements of the SOP says an analysis of the conditions at the premises utilizing maps, charts, and diagrams when appropriate. If it's available, it should be information that's provided to you, shouldn't it?
Objection to the form of the question.
All information should be given to to folks that are doing a search warrant if it's available, yes.
And again, if it's not available, then look for it, and if it can't be found, then it can't be found.
Objection, has been answered, and also calls for testimonies where it's already stated.
You can answer.
I forgot your question, I'm sorry.
Before you send a fellow law enforcement officers into an inherently dangerous situation, you should exhaust reasonable efforts to give them a scene diagram, shouldn't you?
Yes, you should provide as much information as you can to the folks that are working your job.
And failure to provide it puts them at risk.
Failure to provide information to folks working any kind of job is
Dangerous.
dangerous, yes.
And if it's an inherently dangerous job, such as executing a search warrant, it's even more important, isn't it?
Yes.
The next thing the bullet point covers, tactics and equipment that are to be used in the event of a forced entry. And this is supposed to be covered in the briefing. Was that covered?
Yes.
Okay. And again, I think we established you guys didn't do a walkthrough, but did you have any idea that amongst your team there was a ballistic shield?
No. Well, not in the parking lot, no.
Yeah. In the briefing that you guys have regarding tactics and equipment that are used in the event of a forced entry, one of the tactics and equipment is a ram.
Correct.
The other one would be a ballistic shield.
Correct.
Right? And how, to your understanding, how does a ballistic shield work?
So I'm not a trained person on a ballistic shield, so I can give you a layman's version of it, but it is a bulletproof shield. It is inherently complex to operate. You would think it is easy, but it has limited vision. It's heavy. You have to have someone controlling the person who has the shield, giving this person directions. I am not a shield person or what's the term I'm looking for, like a shield operator, so I don't know much more than that about a shield.
You've not been trained on it.
I am familiar with it, but not trained to, I would not be comfortable to use a shield.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. You've
Yes.
not been trained on using a shield. Have you ever done a search warrant when a shield was used?
Yes.
Compound question.
Have you ever done a search warrant where the shield was used?
Yes.
Okay. And is it designed for the, after entry is made, the shield goes in first?
No, the shield would go first. That would defeat the purpose of the shield if it's going after, typically.
Yeah, the way it's designed is ram breaks the door if that's required. Then the shield goes in regarding to protect anyone from shots.
Yes.
Right. So, and
Typically, yes, that would be, yes.
it doesn't make sense for shield to be last.
Not typically, no.
And in fact, since you've talked about it in some of your interviews, you were upset to learn as you guys were getting ready to go in that you all had a shield available.
Correct, I think I used the word irritated, that we had a shield.
So in the parking lot briefing or the briefing at the station, nobody conveyed to you or to presumably to anyone else, oh, you guys have somebody with a ballistic shield.
Correct.
And that information would be inherently valuable with it
Yes.
because that person would go first.
Yes, it would change the plan.
Right? And then as you guys are walking in, and you've already done this plan in the parking lot and the briefing at the station, you look around and you see a guy with a ballistic shield.
Correct.
And it irritated you because we've not re-planned for that at all.
Correct.
And again, that is one of the things that is covered in the SOPs of the tactics that our equipment are to be used in the event of a forced entry. Ballistic shield would be one of those things.
Correct.
And that was never covered.
Correct. And
And again, as I keep talking about it, but that made a situation that's already dangerous even more dangerous.
Objection before asking you
All I knew was that I was not informed of the shield, and that's of utilizing the shield. So when I say I'm irritated, I'm saying that I was not informed of this detail or this part of the plan.
And again, that would be valuable information.
Yes, it would.
And just to be clear, you weren't aware of it because it wasn't covered in the briefing at the station,
Correct.
and it wasn't covered in the briefing in the parking lot.
To my knowledge, it was not.
I mean, you were there, were you there the whole time in the parking lot?
We arrived at staggered times, but yes, yes, I was.
They didn't start the briefing and then you show up halfway through?
No.
Okay. And had it been covered, again, I assume these situations are, you're paying close attention in these briefings.
If you're an intelligent person, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you were paying close attention
Yes,
because you know it's risky.
yes,
Know your job, know what you're supposed to do.
correct.
And if it had been covered that, hey, we've got a ballistic shield, you would have noticed that.
Yes.
Okay, it was not covered,
To
was
the
it?
best of my knowledge, it was not.
And again, that could be information that was also obtained in the, or would be contained in a search warrant operations plan.
Yes, it should be.
And one was never done, to your knowledge.
To my, correct.
Objection.
And based on what we've talked about to this point, none of these things that have occurred up till now, did you have any role in? Other than showing up at the briefing and going to do the job that was assigned to you?
Yes.
Okay, like the search warrant, the intel being provided, the lack of a layout, the incident commander or the lead detective not being at the briefing, not knowing who's got a ballistic shield, not knowing exactly how we're going in or whose job. None of those were your responsibility, were they?
Correct. Correct. I did not provide. Correct. Yes.
And as entry is being, and we'll talk about the knocking and whatnot, but entry is being made into, forced entry is being made into the apartment.
Yes.
And you realize at that point in time, you're doing your job of covering the perimeter. And you realize that someone either was not paying attention in the briefing or didn't get the assignment to cover the guy with the ram.
I know that someone is not with the ram. That's all I know.
And I think we covered, that is not something that we would just forget to do. That job would be assigned.
Yes.
Okay? And as you're doing your job of covering the perimeter, you recognize nobody is covering that guy who is really in the most danger of anyone.
In my opinion, yes.
So you take it on yourself to change jobs on the fly and go and cover him.
Correct.
Search warrant preparation.
Correct.
No role in the investigation of Jamarcus Glover. No role in planning the search warrant execution.
Correct.
No role in conducting any of these briefings.
Correct.
None of these things were your responsibility.
That's all I knew.
You didn't know it at the time. You know it now, don't you?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Okay. Now, let's go back to the narcotics SOPs.
Do you have a copy of that? You said you're
I
putting it
do.
as an exhibit. Alright, so the first, this first one we discussed.
Narcotics SOPs. That's marked as Exhibit 1. Turn to page 42. Okay, right here in the middle of the page, starting at in preparing the affidavit, middle of page 42. What does that say?
In preparing the affidavit, the officer should verify addresses, conduct surveillance or other cooperation, and take other appropriate measures to ensure accuracy of information.
Okay, now I think we talked about part of the accuracy of the information you guys had, there was a heavyset female alone in the apartment.
Correct.
That was false, wasn't it? It was not accurate.
The alone part would not have been accurate.
There was someone else in there.
Yes.
And that, as we already covered too, that is valuable information to have.
Yes, it is.
Go all the way down to 2.6.3.1, lead detective.
Lead detective prior to serving,
Yeah,
Are you asking me to read out?
yeah,
loud, or do you have a
read out
question?
loud. No, read out loud.
lead detective prior to serving the search warrant, the lead detective may request assistance from the tactical operations team with videotaping the location unless exigent circumstances exist. The lead detective is also
Hold on, there was a
responsible.
period there. Okay, so let's stop for a second.
And just to correct the record, he said tactical, it's technical
Technical.
operations.
Technical, my fault, yeah.
So prior to serving the search warrant, the lead detective, who would be Josh James,
Yes, correct.
may request assistance from the technical operations team with videotaping the location unless exigent circumstances exist. Okay? That's what it
Yes.
says. Now, are you aware of any exigent circumstances that prevented that in this case?
I wouldn't have that information, so no.
What is the technical operations team?
I'm not sure. I don't believe I know what it's saying, but I don't think we have a tactical or a technical operations team. We have a unit that does video surveillance, but I'm not exactly sure what they're called.
Did you see any video surveillance of this location before you went to execute the search warrant?
No.
Now, after the period, it says the lead detective. What's that say?
The lead detective is also responsible for the following. Continue.
Yeah.
Number one, notification of the supervisor.
All right,
Two,
let's stop. Let's go one at a time. Are you aware if that occurred?
did the lead detective notify his supervisor? I believe that's obvious from the large group of people that we have there and all the assets that are.
So you believe that
utilized.
occurred based on the briefing and whatnot?
Yes.
Okay, what's the next one?
Completion of the search warrant and risk assessment matrix.
Okay, now, to your knowledge, you never saw one of those.
Correct.
Okay, number three.
Number three, completion of the search warrant checklist.
All right, what is that?
The search warrant checklist would be like as it says, it's a checklist to make sure that you have done certain things. As you said, surveillance. It's similar to the matrix. You're compiling some notes and some evidence and whatnot.
So it's a checklist done to ensure, A, that you're executing a search warrant on a proper place, and B, to ensure the safety of the people executing the search warrant.
Yes.
Okay?
I'm gonna object just to the one question, as the witness already testified, he had no role in obtaining the warrant, also testified he wasn't the lead detective, and calls for speculation.
No, all right. You said yes. You never saw one of those in this case?
Correct, no.
And then, number 4,
Completion of an operations plan,
and as we already covered, you never saw one of those.
correct.
To your knowledge, one was not performed, or was not completed.
Objection. The state's witnesses testimony.
I never saw the operations plan.
Okay. And I think we covered too, according to the SOPs, writing on the whiteboard is not a substitution for the operations plan, which has a specific form under the rules.
The whiteboard would not substitute the form
Okay.
that you're referring to.
What's the next one?
Completion, correction, securing approval of the operation plan.
Okay, so that indicates that you have to prepare an operations plan and then get someone to approve it.
Yes.
Okay? Are you aware if that occurred?
It's obvious that that did occur with all the assets that are available, or that are being utilized that evening. But I don't have information.
Okay. Well, if an operations plan wasn't filled out, how could one be approved?
Objection.
I don't believe there is a timeline as to when the operations plan the form has to be turned in, per se. Because these are fluid events. So if I turn in the operations plan right now, and my search warrant doesn't happen for an hour, there may be a plan. So now I'm committed to that form that I've submitted previously.
Well, it's required by policy, isn't it?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
And it can't be done after a search warrant's executed. One of the reasons for it is to protect both public safety and the officers.
I don't know if there's a timeline to when it can be turned in.
It just has to be done before the search warrant is executed.
Objection. That's not
I believe it has to be done. I believe the form has to be completed.
It has to be completed and has to be approved prior to the service of the search warrant.
This is asking the operations plan, not necessarily the operations form. The form is an administrative form, and that's how I'm looking at it as. The plan would be what I call the whiteboard.
Okay. And again, the SOPs specifically indicate that there's an operations plan form to be used, don't they?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what's the next thing that's required?
Entering pertinent information about the search warrant location into HIDA deconfliction software.
You don't have any idea if that was performed or not?
No.
Okay. And what's number 7?
7, being present at the pre-service briefing.
Okay. And that would be the whiteboard briefing, correct?
I would think so.
Right. And Josh James is the lead detective, and to your knowledge, he was not at that briefing, was he?
That's correct. That's how I remember it, yes.
And even though this policy says the lead detective is responsible for being present at the pre-service briefing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, move on down to the supervisor will also verify and approve. And go ahead and just start with them all.
The supervisor will also verify and approve, 1, the completion of an operations plan, 2, that all personnel participating in the execution of the search warrant have been briefed, 3, that information entry has been placed into deconfliction software, 4, that all personnel participating in the enforcement action have signed and dated the operations plan.
Let's stop there.
Number 4.
Let's stop there.
Just an objective line of questioning again. He's not a supervisor. He doesn't have any idea what the supervisors would verify and approve. Also speculation.
Okay. You participated in the enforcement action, didn't you?
Objection.
Which would be the execution of the search warrant.
Correct.
Did you sign and date an operations plan?
No.
that all, no, go ahead.
Number 4, that all personnel have their required equipment, i.e. ballistic vests, weapon, extra magazines, handcuffs, OC spray, ASPS, not sure what that is, and ASP, and reflective armbands. Other equipment such as eye protection and tactical gloves may be necessary for the execution of the search warrant. As each situation will be different, it is at the discretion of the commanding officer in charge of the search warrant detail as to whether this equipment is needed. This does not prevent any personnel assigned to the detail to utilize this equipment at his or her discretion.
Okay? And I think we've already covered of, one of the things that you were not aware of was the availability of a ballistic shield until you guys show up at the door.
Correct.
Now, what's the next paragraph? Prior to serving the warrant.
Prior to serving a warrant, the supervisor in charge will conduct a pre-service meeting for personnel assigned to execute the search warrant. During this meeting, personnel will be assigned to search and entry teams.
Right? And you were assigned to one of those search and entry teams, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then what's the next paragraph?
Supervisor is also responsible for reviewing the search warrant checklist and matrix with the lead detective prior to the pre-service meeting. All personnel involved in the execution of the warrant should be present at the pre-service meeting.
Okay, now, the checklist and the matrix, again, we've covered. You never saw either one of those.
Objection, ask the answer.
You can answer.
Correct.
Right? And you never signed and dated an operations plan.
Correct.
All right, go to the next page of the items discussed should include.
Okay. The items discussed should include, but not be limited to, the following: person in charge, location.
Now, you covered the person in charge was Lieutenant Hoover, correct?
Yes.
So that was covered.
Yes. Location, layout of the premises.
Now, the layout of the premises, that was not covered, correct? You had no idea what the layout of the place was when you went there.
Objection.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Layout of the premises, suspect information, weapons, possibility of children present, possibility of disabled persons present, animals present, chemical hazards, environmental hazard, types of odors, fortifications, fences and walls, probable location of evidence, need for EMS, required equipment, i.e. raid jackets, display badges, other identifications, etc., radio frequencies to be utilized, contingency plan. If a detective is seriously injured and a hospital run is required, access route to the closest hospital, alternate breach entry location. This will be noted on the operation plan.
Was that covered?
No. Surveillance conducted prior to entry.
Was that covered?
Yes, we were told that we had a surveillance, that we had Mike Campbell was being the surveillance person.
Was any information from the surveillance conveyed to you?
Not that I remember specifically.
Because, you know, as we said, you believe there was a female there alone.
Correct.
All the way down to the last paragraph here on page 44.
Execution of the search warrant. When executing the search warrant, the lead detective will be in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle in order to lead the search warrant team from the vehicle to the target location.
All right, stop. The lead detective in this case wasn't even there, was it? Josh Janes
Right.
was the lead detective.
Yes.
He wasn't in the first car going to Springfield, was he?
No, he was not.
He wasn't even at Springfield.
Correct.
Now, you're on page 45.
Yes.
All right, let's go all the way down to an officer may break in.
Where do you see that at?
Are you familiar with this page?
Not really, no.
If you feel like you need to review the document prior to answering a question on a
Well,
specific
but-
sentence, take your time to do it.
That's okay. What are you reading? Okay.
Right there. Page 45. Narcotics, SOPs.
An officer may break into and enter any premises or vehicle when necessary for the execution of a search warrant if, number one, the officer has previously announced his or her identity and purpose, reasonably believes that either the admittance is being denied or unreasonably delayed, or that the premises or vehicle is unoccupied.
Number 2.
Two, the officer has probable cause to believe that given notice would endanger the life or safety of any person or the destruction of evidence is imminent.
Okay. Now, number 2 did not, in your understanding, number 2 did not apply in this situation.
Say that again.
Did you, was it your belief that you all had probable cause to believe that giving notice would endanger the life or safety of any person or the destruction of evidence is imminent? Because you all actually gave notice, correct?
Right, yes.
So 2 did not apply. That's for a no-no.
Yeah, correct.
All right, so let's talk about number 1. May break into and enter any premises if, for the execution of a search warrant, if the officer has previously announced his identity, and you indicated that occurred,
Yes.
all right, and purpose, and reasonably believes either that admittance or being denied. Did you all have any reason to believe that your admittance was being denied?
I'm not sure I understand that correctly. Denying is the door was not being opened, so that is how I would interpret it.
This might be a good time for us to take a break. So ladies and gentlemen, it's 5 till 3. Let's take a recess until 10 after 3, and please remember the separation admonition. All right, ladies and gentlemen, anything to report from the break? All right, Mr. Finke?
Knocking the first 2 times and not announcing, and then announcing that entry was being denied.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you have any role in making the decision to breach the door?
No, no.
Steve, I realize you're about to get into this new line of questioning. Can you go to
Go ahead. Yeah, let's take 5.
Off the record at 11:46. Back on the record at 11:54.
Okay. When we stopped, we were talking about page 45 of the narcotics manual regarding forced entry into a premises. And number 1 of an officer may break into and enter a premises if the officer has previously announced his or her identity and purpose. And that occurred, we've established.
Correct.
And the first couple of times he knocked and didn't announce. Is that right?
Yes.
And then he announced. Were other people talking during that time?
Yes.
Okay. Who else what else was going on when he's trying to announce? Other people kind of yelling search warrant, police, or is that when Brett is arguing with the neighbor, or what else? What other noise is going on?
Objection.
So the timeline, and this is very simplified, obviously. John makes a normal knock, and at some point prior to the forceful knocks is when this other person from above comes out, and then the forceful knocks and the door comes down. That's obviously very simplified.
Okay, so normal knock, no announce. Forceful knock, no announce. Neighbor comes out, argument ensues. More forceful knock with announce, maybe 1 or 2 times, and then hit the door. Is that how you recall it?
Objection. State's testimony.
That's simplified. Yes, that is more or less the timeline.
Okay, so, and I think part of that time, you were kind of outside watching the perimeter, which you understood to be your job,
Yes.
or not understood, that was your job.
Correct.
Who assigned that job to you?
Oh, that I don't exactly remember. It would have been Hoover or John manually.
But part of this time, you're out a little farther away watching the perimeter sliding glass door, so to speak.
Yes.
And then you realize, he knocks again, neighbor comes out. Sometime around that time, do you realize Noble doesn't have cover?
No, that I only noticed when Nobles had cover was after he'd already hit the door maybe once or twice.
Okay, so he's already hitting the door before you realize he doesn't have cover,
Yes.
and you have to move at that point in time.
Correct.
Okay, and do you know who all is talking, yelling during the time that Brett is knocking? Or not, excuse me, not Brett,
Right.
John. You said other people are talking during that time when you guys are outside the door. And we know there was a time when Brett and the neighbor are arguing.
Yes.
And they're actually yelling, both of them, correct?
Yes.
And does Hoover actually get into a yell? Is he yelling as well?
I don't remember Hoover yelling, no.
Okay, so just Hankison's the only one you recall yelling, and then the neighbor yelling back.
Yes.
And they're going back and forth for a little bit of time.
Correct.
during that time, John is trying to knock and communicate with the people in the apartment?
I don't know.
Okay. Is it fairly kind of chaotic?
There's a lot of noise and it's being amplified from this shape of the building. Yes.
Okay. So there's a lot of noise both from him knocking, him announcing, Brett yelling, neighbor yelling, maybe other people announcing police or whatever.
That is not happening at the same time per se.
Okay.
That is happening over several seconds, but it's not happening as in one
Yeah.
form.
Not all at once.
The same.
Yeah.
45 seconds.
And that was just his perception.
Correct.
But all of him yelling, police, search warrant. Did you ever yell?
No.
Okay. Did you hear other officers yell?
Yes.
Okay. You don't know who, you just know they're yelling.
Correct.
Right? And you've got Brett yelling, not at the door, but at the neighbor. You can answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Brent is having a
Shouting
verbal
match.
exchange with this guy.
Is it a shouting match?
It is, and I believe I explained it as the guy is being somewhat belligerent to Brent and questioning his verbal directions.
Okay. The neighbor's being, not neighbor, but the guy's being loud.
Yes.
And did you hear his act? Is he hard to understand?
I am not able to understand what they're saying due to the distance.
She's hearing
All
you.
I hear is loud shouting back and forth.
Okay. And other officers are yelling police or search warrant or this is the cops or whatever.
I don't believe anybody was yelling police search warrant during this verbal exchange.
Okay.
Between Brent and the upstairs guy.
Okay. But there came a time when not only John was yelling police search warrant, or did he yell search warrant until the door was breached?
I don't know exactly what everybody says, but you would say police search warrant or search warrant, police come to the door. So a verbal directive of police would have been given, or was given at the door.
Okay. And multiple people are giving it.
Yes.
And does that make, because you've actually given a statement that you didn't talk because when multiple people talk, it makes it hard to understand.
Yes.
And multiple people are talking in this, outside this door.
They are giving loud verbal directives, yes.
Different people, and they're not like all saying 1, 2, 3, let's yell search warrant. Everybody's talking at a different time
Yes.
and saying different things.
Yes.
Making it hard to understand.
Objection.
I believe they're making it very clear by their loud voices of what they're saying.
Did you ever hear anyone from inside say, "We're not letting you in"?
No.
Denying entrance.
No, I heard no one speaking to me from inside the building.
Okay. Moved into position yet?
It could have been due to the distance, yes.
Okay. Once you're aware that if someone is yelling, who is it? Is it reasonable to actually tell everybody, hey, shut up, let's see if we can communicate with this person? So you don't have to bust the door down?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Once somebody says, hey, who is it? Rather than everybody yelling at once, somebody should communicate with them.
Correct, yes.
Now, is that something that is covered in a search warrant briefing or the parking lot plan of who's going to try to communicate with the person in the residence?
Would that be formally communicated? No. that would not be formally communicated. It would be, like I said, police work is fluid, so if I can hear a person and I'm on the back side of the building, I would want to communicate that to folks who are on the front side of the building. So that wouldn't be an assigned job per se. You would set yourself up for failure if you did that.
Okay, so there's not one person that's supposed to talk and try to make contact.
Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, but what I'm at is, if everybody's yelling at once, it makes it much harder to understand.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Is anybody assigned to, I'm the guy that's going to be knocking and yelling, everybody else be quiet so they can understand me?
I don't believe there's a formal assignment, but if you're the person standing at the door, you are the person who is going to be knocking and announcing. That would be logical.
Right. And so that person knocks and announces, and everybody else shuts up, so maybe they can understand what's going on. Objection is answered. Which is what you did, actually.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But everybody else didn't. Everybody else is talking. You're being quiet, but other people are yelling.
No, well, John's initial light knock. I'm not sure I understand I don't understand the question. So there's a timeline that's happening here. So this isn't a continuous knocking. There are gaps here, so people can communicate with us and we can communicate with folks.
Okay. And what I think I'm trying to ask him, I think we've covered it, but nobody is doing John's not doing the only talking. Other people are talking and yelling and trying to communicate.
Yes, other people are giving.
Before we get back into this, did you see after the shots were fired, Mangley returns fire, you return fire, did you see a pile of men in the parking lot when you came out?
I want to check the form just because I don't understand the question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
After the shot, after you fired the shots
Mhm.
and you retreated to the parking lot,
Mhm.
did you see a pile of men laying on the ground?
At some point, I wouldn't describe it like that.
Okay, how would you describe it?
From which part of the timeline?
Okay, well, were there any other times that you saw a group of men laying on the ground?
What do you mean by laying on the ground?
Well, from the time you guys arrived at Springfield to execute the search warrant until you left with peer support, was there any time in which part of your team were on the ground?
Yes.
All right, what was the first time?
The first time that I saw someone on the ground, laying on the ground,
Mhm.
in a prone position would have been Mike Campbell, probably, would have been the closest person I saw to the laying or in a prone position.
Okay, and where was that?
In the, what I call like the T intersection there of the sidewalk and the apartment walkway area, breezeway.
Towards the curb of the parking lot?
Yes, the curb.
Okay, and when was that?
That was as we were retreating, like you said.
Who else did you see on the ground? Did you see anybody else either fall over Campbell or be beside Campbell on the ground?
So Campbell is on the ground, and that's when, and I can't specifically identify people, but that is when most of the folks that were in the vestibule area kind of bulldoze or walk over Mike Campbell.
Okay, so the people that were in the vestibule area are retreating. And that would include you,
Yes,
Sergeant Mattingly,
correct.
Hoover,
Mhm.
Nobles,
Yes,
James,
yes.
and Hankison? Or was,
Now, I am not able to identify any specific person other than John and Mike Campbell. I can't identify anybody else than them precisely.
but you saw both of those two go to the ground?
Mike Campbell is on the ground and John is scooching, shuffling, you know. He's not on the ground, he is moving over Mike Campbell.
Okay. Do you see him fall over Mike Campbell?
Not necessarily fall, just kind of bulldoze over him, and then they're out of sight.
Let me start, what do you mean by bulldoze over?
Well, Mike Campbell is a fairly large man, and behind Mike Campbell is the parking lot, cars, so that is a confined space. So you can't fit Mike Campbell and other bodies through this confined space without there being some type of tripping or falling or stumbling or however you want to call that.
Okay. So, trip, fall, stumble, bulldoze, whatever reason, Mattingly goes over Campbell and goes to the ground.
I don't know if, I can't identify specific people, but people more or less go over Campbell to get through the parking lot.
Okay. Does other people fall?
It is just a mass of people moving over Mike Campbell. And at the same time, I am also moving as well. So I'm not able to give great detail as to who's doing what and whatnot. I just see men falling and tripping and are moving forward.
Okay. Now, and you guys are retreating from the apartment. Are you trying to go backwards, or you turn and have your back to the apartment?
I am moving, well, I'll say I am moving away from the apartment. Say that again, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, as you're retreating from the apartment to the parking lot.
Right.
Everybody else is retreating also?
Yes.
Okay. Are you running with your back to the apartment, facing the parking lot, or are you backing out, still looking at the apartment?
No, I am facing the parking lot and moving towards the parking lot.
And that's how you see Campbell,
Yes.
Mattingly, anybody else trying to get
Correct.
over the top of it.
Yes.
And you may have been, do you observe anyone else actually go down, or are they just scrambling over the top of him, or how exactly does that happen?
Objection, I can answer the question.
I'll use your word, just scrambling, moving forward, just a mass of people, unidentifiable people moving forward, scrambling.
Okay. Is anyone shooting at the apartment at that time?
I believe I said that I am able to see flashing while I'm moving from the vestibule to the parking lot.
Okay.
But, so yes, I'm able to see flashing lights.
Okay.
Flashes.
You don't, at the time, you do not know either if that's one of you guys providing cover or someone else shooting? Or do you?
I don't know.
Okay. At what point in time did you say, unfuck yourself and reload?
That was during the reloading, when we were all in cover.
So after you all get to the parking lot, scramble, fall, whatever, you're kind of in cover.
Yes, we're behind the parking lot, or behind the parking lot cars.
Now, is someone still out in front of the cars returning fire into the building?
I don't know, I don't think I ever said anything like that.
Okay. So at what point in time do you recall the shooting stopping?
I'm not sure I'm able to, I put an exact timeline on it. I know that I saw those flashes of lights as I'm moving through those, or just prior to moving through those cars into the parking lot.
Did anyone ride with you from the station to St. Andrew's Church?
No, no.
Okay. Did anyone ride with you from St. Andrew's Church to Springfield?
Yes.
Who was that?
Lieutenant Hoover.
Okay, and his car or truck was left at the church?
Presumably, yes. I'm not sure how he got there. but
You don't know how he
presumably.
got to the church?
Correct.
All right. Now, when you left the briefing at the station, where did you go?
I went to the church.
Went directly to the church from the station?
Yes.
Did you go by Dixie Highway, anywhere out on Dixie Highway?
No, I don't believe so. I don't know that area that well. I would have gone right to that location.
Okay. Do you recall who else drove from the church to Springfield?
No, I didn't. We didn't. What's the word? We didn't caravan over there, follow each other over there. So
Did
I
not?
don't know. Correct.
Okay. Everybody just kind of went separate and arrived when they got there?
Yes.
Was that part of the operations plan or the briefing?
To meet at the church, yes. Not transportation to the church.
Okay, so getting from the church to Springfield wasn't something that was covered?
Yes, it was covered
Was it?
at the church.
Okay. And how was it covered? You're not going to caravan, just everybody get there when they get there, or how did that work?
From
Objection of misstates his testimony. He said that there was no plan to caravan from the briefing to the church, not from the church to Springfield. Answer the question.
correct. There's no plan to go from the church to or from the office to the church. There's no plan, but from the church to the location, you want to minimize as many vehicles as you can.
And all get there at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, and so you all followed each other,
Yes.
and,
To the church, or to you're killing me here.
I got you.
To Springfield, yes.
And, someone rode with you,
Right, Hoover, yes.
Hoover rode with you. Did anyone ride with Nobles?
I don't know.
Did he have anyone else in his truck?
I don't know.
Do you recall how seeing Cole Gibson there?
Yes.
Who
No,
is-
no, not at the church, no.
Okay, at Springfield.
Yes.
And when do you recall seeing him?
My sense of time when Cole got there, that was after SWAT got there, so sometime after the event.
Did you talk to Detective Gibson?
Yes.
Okay. Was he your peer escort?
Informally, I would say yes. I hadn't heard the term peer escort, so that night, So Cole would have been informally, I think, my peer score.
Clip on his tack vest.
Right.
Where did you keep the actual cameras?
What do you mean? The camera is kept on your person.
All
On the
right.
clip, that's where it's kept on. the
It
clip.
goes on the clip that's on your tack vest, is that right?
Yes.
And if you're not wearing a tack vest, where does it go?
It can go in various places, and on the dock, and your desk, it can go in various places.
On your lapel?
Right.
Anywhere you want to wear it?
Mhm.
Right. Now, it was removed from your tack vest that night, is that correct?
No.
It was
I-
on?
No, I didn't have a camera on there.
Okay. So if there's a place for it on your tack vest to mount, it was not in that mount, correct?
Correct.
Had it just never been on that tack vest, or was it removed from it?
The camera wasn't with me that evening.
Where was it?
To the best of my knowledge, it was in the car or in my desk.
Were you in your car?
That evening, yes.
Okay, so if to the best of your knowledge, it was in your car, then it was with you that evening.
Objection to the form of the question. That's what he said. You answer.
The car was either in my desk or in the car or somewhere, yes.
But you never looked for it,
I don't remember looking for it, correct.
because you were not going to wear it.
Right.
It was that you recorded on the day before with your body cam,
No, I have no idea.
okay? Would it have been your work as a law enforcement officer,
Probably.
okay? And do you do other law enforcement work other than narcotics at that time?
I'm a policeman, so I could pretty much do almost any job that they ask me to do.
Or were you doing other jobs on March 11th, or were you doing narcotics work?
I don't know exactly.
Because if you're doing narcotics work and you're recording and downloading video on March 11th, the day before, you obviously understood that narcotics use their body cameras.
I'm not disputing that. That's correct. I'm aware of, yes.
And was there if narcotics used body cameras, if they were issued, and it was used the day before this raid, what reason was it not used for this specific search warrant execution?
I don't know. Where are you looking at, right here? Okay, my fault. Go ahead. I thought you were looking, okay. CID was created combining other pre-existing investigatory units, narcotics and Ninth Mobile.
Keep going.
The operations manual for CID was revised on July 1, 2020. There was not an operations manual for the unit prior to this, so I examined previous operations manuals for the narcotics unit and Ninth Mobile. The Ninth Mobile operations manual does not discuss use of V or WVS. Additionally, the Ninth Mobile detectives were routinely issued the equipment and were obligated to use the equipment as directed by LNPD policy.
Right, stop for a second. Were you ever part of the Ninth Mobile?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
The operations manual for the narcotics unit from the effective date of July 18, 2019 addressed WVS with little variation to LMPD policy. There are no additional prohibitions listed for the use of the equipment specific to the covert nature of the investigation.
All right, stop. So, at least according to this report, there is no, well, let's use the exact language. The operations manual for the narcotics unit addressed WVS with little variation to the LMPD policy. Okay? Now, do you dispute that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what do you base that on?
I base that on my experience in the years I was in narcotics.
Okay. Is anything specific to the policy, or just that's how you did it?
Both, probably.
Okay. Had you last reviewed the Narcotics Operations Manual, SOP?
I have no idea.
So you weren't particularly familiar with it on either in March of 2020 or today?
No, I'm familiar with all of the policies. I just hadn't, I don't know when the last time I reviewed it would have been.
Are you aware of anything in the narcotics policy that exempts you from having to use a body camera if it's assigned to you?
I don't have that policy in front of me, but I would say there are exemptions. Yes, there are. There would have to be.
Well, we looked at it earlier. It's exhibit.
This is not the narcotics policy, though.
That is.
Okay.
And are you familiar with anything in the narcotics policy that exempts narcotics officers from using WVS if it's been assigned to them?
I mean, I would have to go through this whole thing, but there has to be exemptions of using a video recorder for the work we do.
You don't know what it is, you just think there has to be one.
There has to be one.
Okay. Part of a policy that exempted narcotics from wearing WVS.
There would have to be one.
Okay, but you don't know it, you just think there was one.
Correct.
Because nobody did.
I'm not sure about that. I would say there has to be a policy on when you can and can't, when an appropriate time would be to wear the video system.
You're just not familiar with it.
I can't remember it today.
Okay. And as we talked about initially, these policies and SOPs are put in place as best practices,
Yes.
right? And they can be deviated from in a limited number of circumstances,
I would agree, yes.
right? One of them is exigent circumstances,
Yes.
public safety,
Correct.
if something in it's not addressed by the policies,
Correct.
right? Other than that, you're supposed to follow them.
Correct.
And they are designed, one, not only for officer safety, but public safety as well.
Yes.
And choosing to ignore one just because you think there might be something that allows you to can be dangerous, can't it?
Object to the form of the question.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. Choosing to ignore a policy just because you think there's a reason you can without knowing anything can be dangerous, can't it?
Object to the form of the question.
It would be inappropriate, yes.
And much like if these people doing the search warrant operations plans, they just said, I don't think I have to do that, it doesn't really apply to me. That puts you in danger when they don't do what they're supposed to, doesn't.
Objective form of question.
It could complicate situations by not following that form, yes.
The procedures are in place for a reason. And ignoring them or disregarding them makes inherently dangerous situations more dangerous.
Objection.
Department without positively identifying a threat.
All right, stop for a second. Are you trained in the academy about use of deadly force?
Yes,
Target identification?
yes,
Being responsible for every shot? You're accountable for every shot?
yes,
Do you, do you agree that you shot 16 times that night?
I have been informed of that prior 16 years.
And I've read your, you at the time had no idea how many times you shot.
Objection to the floor.
I was under the impression I fired 4 rounds at the time.
Was there a time in which you had a positive target identification on the shot that was fired at Sergeant Matty?
I have clearly, over various interviews, clearly explained what I was shooting at.
And that was a shadowy figure?
That was a deadly threat in front of me that shot at me, correct?
Well, and again, I don't want to go too far into this. The individual that was killed did not fire a gun at you, correct?
Correct.
And did you ever actually see a gunshot be fired at you?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Where were you when you observed the shot being fired?
In the threshold, the frame of the door. Not in the frame of the door, but within the frame of the door.
And Sergeant Mattingly was in front of you in the frame of the door?
Correct.
And you were right behind him in the frame of the door?
I was behind him, yes.
Now, is that, moving back to the briefing and the planning, is that how you guys were briefed and to execute the search warrant?
No, like we discussed earlier, the plan changed due to seeing that Mike Knowles didn't have a covered person.
Somebody either didn't get assigned the proper role to cover Mike Nobles, or they didn't do their job.
Objection. Asking the attorney.
Mike Knowles, correct, did not have a covered person when he was working.
Right. And again, that would be something that has to be assigned.
Yes.
And at least either it wasn't done or somebody didn't do it.
Same objection.
Correct.
Right? And so you took that responsibility.
Yes.
Now, are you trained for both of you to be in the doorway at one time?
Well, when you say in the doorway, as we all know, a doorway is a small space. You can't fit 2 men side by side into a doorway. You stagger each other like a roller coaster or a train car.
Okay? So, and would that be what is called in police work, I guess, the fatal funnel?
Correct. A confined space would be the fatal funnel.
No. Was it your all's part of the briefing and plan for both of you all to be in the doorway at the same time?
How else do you get into a doorway without standing in front of the doorway?
Okay, and my question is, the part of the planning was for both of you guys to be in the doorway at once?
Objective form.
You can only fit so many inches within a doorway. Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
No,
You can't walk two people through a door, is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm saying, was that how it was planned? You guys both being in the doorway together, was that part of the plan of breaching the apartment?
How else do you get multiple bodies through a doorway if you're not standing in the doorway?
Is that a yes?
No.
It's common sense. You have to form a line to walk into a door.
Okay, and so are you saying that was part of you and Mattingly both being in the doorway?
That's
Staggered.
not a plan, that's common sense.
Okay, well, and again, when you're executing the entry of an apartment, we do all of these things as required by policy to plan that out, correct?
Correct.
So there's not mistakes that happen, and both the public and officers aren't put in unreasonable danger. And that plan includes how entry is made, who goes in, when they go in, and how that is done, correct?
Yes.
Was part of that plan for Mattingly to go in first, you be staggered behind him also in the doorway?
Initially, no, that was not, to my knowledge, that was not the plan, no.
Yeah.
Due to my assignment, yes.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm trying to get to is, it was never planned for you and Mattingly to both be in the doorway.
Yes, correct.
In the briefing, at the church, none of this is ever part of a plan.
Objective to the form of the question.
Correct. There was not a formal plan. Yes, correct.
And all of those, through no fault of yours, were supposed to be done before you're in that situation.
Objective to the form of the question. Can we check you understand what he's asking?
Yes, there was a plan prior to me moving forward.
Actually, I think, what was my last question?
And all of those, through no fault of yours, were supposed to be done before you're in that situation.
That being who goes in, who makes entry, who goes in first, who goes in second, who's covering Nobles, who's covering Mattingly, all of those were part of, or supposed to be planned out.
Yes.
Okay. None of that was actually done and planned out ahead of time by whoever at the station or whoever at the church.
Object. The state's testimony.
No, there was a plan from the church to the parking lot, or from the church to, we had the plan, the operations, see now I'm confusing myself, you're confusing me. We had our church parking lot operations plan with individual signs.
Okay. And whose assignment was it to cover the ramp?
I don't know.
And as, again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but that is one of the most important roles.
Objection, answer, horse is dead.
Cover for
Yes,
the ramp.
Mike Nobles' job is, the cover person for Mike Nobles' job is an important job, yes.
That has to be assigned.
Yes.
And to your knowledge, it wasn't assigned.
I don't remember if it was or not, yes, correct.
And your assignment was to cover the perimeter.
Yes.
So in back to what I was asking of, part of the plan, you were never supposed to be entering the doorway together with Mattingly, were you? You were supposed to be watching the perimeter.
That's a hard question to answer because plans change. But to answer your question, if plans go exactly how they're supposed to go, then the answer would be yes.
And by the same token, the entire plan, if you have a ballistic shield, that's supposed to go in first before anybody.
I'm not an expert on the ballistic shield, but from my training experience, yes, the ballistic shield should go first.
And had anyone, or at least you, been aware that there was a ballistic shield available, either at the briefing at the station or at the church briefing, you would have said, hey, how about the ballistic shield guy go first?
Objection. Point of question.
Or would you have said that?
I think that would have been implied.
Yeah, it just, everybody knows that's supposed to go first, don't they?
Correct.
Objection. Point of question.
And in whatever briefing and whatever plan that was set up to go into this apartment, nobody ever knows until you're walking up there, oh, we've got a ballistic shield.
I didn't know until we were walking down.
And it upsets you
Yes, it irritated me.
because, again, that changes everything, doesn't it?
Question asked and answered.
Yes.
Now, turn to page 50. Cam, you do police-related activities, wouldn't it?
Depending on what I'm doing in that unit at the time.
What do you think?
I wouldn't want to wear a body camera while I'm interviewing a confidential informant. Or well, that's one example.
Well, are you aware if there's a specific exception in the body cam policy for confidential informants?
I would hope so.
There is, but is there any other examples other than confidential informants that you can think of?
I'm sure there are, but I can't think of any right now.
Let's take a break, about 5 minutes.
Back at the record at 140.
Mr. Cosgrove, I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 8. We're talking about we've already looked at Exhibit 1, the narcotics manual. That's the SOP regarding narcotics investigations. I'll look through there and see if you see anything that addresses body cams in that, or exemptions for body cams. To knock and announce. Who made that decision?
I don't know who made that decision, but that's what I was instructed to do while in the briefing room at the office.
That at the headquarters or station,
Correct.
they said knock and announce.
Yes.
Now, did you determine that to be an order that you could not deviate from?
You could deviate from that, yes, but based on what I was told, the totality of it, the female, the heavy set, the direction that I was given on the board, you could deviate from it for reasons that we would determine while on scene, such as like some kind of exigent circumstance, somebody needing immediate help or something like this, just some extenuating circumstance.
Okay. Now, if someone needs immediate help, you don't even have to have a search warrant, do you?
Correct, and that's why I kind of stumbled over myself there.
All right. But if you are going to the if you have a knock and announce warrant, okay, you're not allowed to just go in and no knock, are you?
No, no.
You have to knock and announce. If
Right.
you have a no-knock warrant, you can go in without knocking, or you can choose to knock.
Yes.
Right. Now, however, if you have a no-knock warrant, SWAT is supposed to do it, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. And so, simply because you have a no-knock warrant and you decide, oh, we're gonna knock and announce, you don't get to go there and change your mind all of a sudden because SWAT's not there.
Objection to the form of the question, I want to further object because this witness has already testified that he was not a part of the decision-making. And to the extent there are any questions about the risk assessment matrix, he's already testified that he wasn't involved in the creation, preparation, or submission of that document, and never even seen it.
And you wish you'd have seen it, don't you?
It would have been
Objection to the form
helpful.
of the question.
An accurate risk assessment matrix would have been very helpful, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But back to the question I was asking of, if you have a no-knock warrant and you're briefed that we're gonna knock and announce, and just you guys, CID guys, go. Absent something, somebody inside being at risk, you guys aren't allowed to just say, no, we're gonna go in as no-knock, because SWAT is not there, correct?
Correct, unless there's some new mitigating circumstances that would make it, or would go back on the original no-knock. Correct.
All right, the Commonwealth's next witness.
Your Honor, first and foremost, that's the end of the clip, and at this time I would move to admit it's going to be Commonwealth's Exhibit 155, which are all 16 clips together on this USB drive.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, it'll be so admitted.
Commonwealth calls Chelsea Napper.
If you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You can take your mask off while you're testifying if you wish, but you're not required to.
So state your name and spell it, please.
Chelsea Napper, and it's Chelseey, last name too, Napper.
And if you would speak up so we can hear. And do you live in Louisville?
Yes,
Did you grow up in Louisville?
I did.
Did you go to high school in Louisville?
I did.
Now, do you live with Cody Etherton?
Yes.
And how long have you all been together?
I would say a little over 6 years.
Or actually a little under 6 years, sorry. Or no, a little over 6 years,
Little
sorry.
over 6 years.
Yeah.
Do you and Cody have children?
Yes.
And who are they?
I have an older son named Zayden, and we have a 2-year-old together named Bryson.
Now, you said Zayden is your son.
Right.
When you met Cody, did you have, Zayden had already been born?
Not when I met him, but me and Cody have known each other for a long time, but I had him before Bryson.
And did you always have custody of Zayden?
I'm sorry, before me and Cody were together, I meant to say I did have Zayden.
And did you always have custody?
Yes.
Now, Bryson was born when? You're and Cody's son.
June 3rd, 2020.
So in March 12th specifically, you were pregnant with Bryson?
Yes.
How many months pregnant?
I would say about 7 months.
And where did you and Cody, in March of 2020, you, Cody, and Zayden live?
In St. Anthony Garden Apartments.
And what's that address?
3003 Springfield Drive, Apartment 3.
Ms. Napper, I'm going to hand you 2 photographs marked Commonwealth Exhibit 156. And what does that photograph show?
This was right after Bryson was born. Well, I would say a couple weeks after he was born. We went to Cody's grandma's to just visit.
And that's you, Cody, Zayden, and Bryson.
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the family?
Absolutely.
I looked at it, Exhibit 156 at this time.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, it'll be so admitted.
Now, 157, and this photograph. And who is that?
That's Zayden.
That's Zayden?
Yep.
And is that when was that taken, that picture?
This was, I would say, in 2020.
And is that a accurate picture of your son?
Yes.
And so we move to admit Exhibit 157.
No objection.
It'll be so admitted.
How long had you all lived at 3003 Springfield?
Over a year, but less than 2 years.
And what was your apartment number?
Apartment 3.
Now, I want you to, we're going to put a photograph on the screen behind you, which Commonwealth has already been admitted as Commonwealth Exhibit 71. And is there a laser pointer up there?
I don't see one. Thank you.
You would take a look at this overhead, and as you see the building 3003 designated up there, and can you just point to it with the laser? Now, generally, when you all would come home to your apartment 3 there, how would you enter the complex here? Would you just take us on the route that you would come in?
Well, so if you go up the road, like it would be over here, down this road, there's a main road like over here. You go up and there's an entrance It's not really shown in this picture.
So how would you come in, from the lower road or the road right?
No, there was a gate that blocked this. So we would have to come into the main entrance of the apartments, which would be this.
That
is the
way?
we would take.
And because the gate was locked
Right,
at that time in March, early March of 2020.
yes.
So did you have a particular parking place that you all used?
Not like one specific, no, we just parked.
So those buildings that are on the, at what we're looking at, the lower road there as you're coming in, those apartment buildings are right across the street then from your building?
These?
Yes,
Yes.
okay. Now, did you, at that time, were you working
I just lost my job from COVID.
because of COVID?
Yes.
Because actually, that's right about the day that COVID hit.
March 6th is when I would say the majority of people were either laid off or sent to work from home. And that's, so about a week before this happened.
And again, if you could speak up just a little bit. And was Cody working?
Yes.
And what hours did he work?
I mean, he left really early in the morning, of course, Monday through Friday, but he did a lot of, working overtime at night and on the weekends.
Now, if you would look at Exhibit 76, which has been admitted, and that's behind you again on the screen, and point out where the front door is of your apartment, and then the bedroom that you and Cody used, and the bedroom that Zayden slept in. And then specifically in the bedroom where Zayden slept, where was his bed?
His bed, so the pillows were right here, but it would go long ways, just like that.
So the pillows were on that wall, that common wall with the living room then.
Right.
And the doorway then from your and Cody's bedroom was right across from the doorway to Zayden's bedroom.
Right.
As we see there. Now, you said you had lived there about 2 years in the building?
Yes.
Did you know the neighbors as you're standing in your front door to apartment 3? Apartment 4 would be directly to your left if you're facing the parking lot. Did you know the folks that lived in apartment 4?
I didn't know them, but I passed by with them.
And who would you,
I mainly, are you asking? Go ahead, sorry.
well, did you know their name?
No.
And how many people were there?
I would say 2 females, and I saw 1 female with a younger child quite often, and then maybe 1 male.
Now, you saw a male that was actually living there, you thought? Or coming to visit?
Honestly, I didn't think too much about it to know whether he was living there or not.
Okay. And how long had you been seeing the male?
I knew 2 females lived there for a fact.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't put.
I can't hear you once again.
I couldn't put a time on it. I just seen him in passing. I didn't know, if he
Okay.
lived there or not. I couldn't tell you if he had a bedroom or if he lived.
Okay. So did you know any of the other neighbors, such as as you're facing looking into the breezeway, to the left of your apartment would be apartment 2. Did you know those people?
I did. And In the back, so 1, 2, she was an older lady, yeah, I knew her.
So her doorway was right next to your front door.
Right.
Then her, because would you point out your patio there at the back? So was her patio right next to yours?
Yes.
And then did you know the people in apartment 1?
I mean, if they were in a crowd, I could point them out, but no, I didn't know them personally.
What about any of the 4 apartments upstairs? That would be the number 5, number 6, number 7, or number 8.
No, I didn't.
You didn't know them. Now, on March the 12th, what were you and Cody and Zayden doing that evening?
That evening, I didn't have, I remember we did, we colored in a coloring book and just pretty much took it easy. We went to bed fairly early, I'd say about 10:30, and
You all were in bed then, 10:30?
yes,
And Zayden was in bed?
yes,
And Zayden was in his bedroom,
yes,
in his bed.
right.
Now, first of all, are you a light sleeper or heavy sleeper?
I'm a very heavy sleeper,
Have you always been that way?
always.
What about Cody?
He is a very light sleeper.
And how about Zayden?
He's a heavy sleeper.
He is a heavy sleeper. Once again, I'm going to have to ask you to speak up.
I'm sorry. He's a very heavy sleeper.
So were you all asleep after you went to bed about 10, you said, and were you asleep?
Yes.
What happened that woke you up?
About 12:40-ish, I feel like me and Cody both jumped out of bed at the same time. It was extremely loud. It felt like, I don't know, somebody set off a bomb or something.
What did you do?
So he took off, and
Who is he?
Cody took off down the hallway, and I just froze for a second, and then I think he said that our apartment is getting shot up, and so I went. He either said something about Zayden, or I don't remember exactly, but I went to check on Zayden, and I felt on him because he said there was bullets flying everywhere. So
Cody said that?
Yes. So I felt Zayden and made sure he was okay, and I walked out of his room and I went to the hallway because I was too. So I go and I check on Zayden. I walk out of the hallway because I was too scared to go past here. So Cody told me, get Zayden, get on the ground, and I got Zayden. I got on the ground.
So point out where you got on the ground.
I got Zayden, and we got down here once everything was fine. The noise stopped. I walked out and I sat down here on the ground. I called my grandma. She said that she really couldn't understand what I was saying, and told me if it was an emergency to call 911. So the reason I called my grandma was because first of all, I had just jumped up from sleep, so I was kind of, and I knew that something bad was happening, and my first instinct told me that I needed to get Zayden out of the situation. Whatever it was, I had no idea what was going on, but I felt like Zayden needed to be picked up. So I called her. She said she couldn't understand me, told me to call 911 if it was an emergency. So I called 911. She said, she kind of asked me what was going on, and I told her all I knew. Our apartment was being shot up. There was bullet holes all through the walls, and she assured me that the police were on the scene. And then I later found out they're the ones shooting up.
Okay. Have you had a chance to listen to that 911 call?
I have.
And does that sound like an accurate representation of what you said when you called 911, the first time you called?
Yes.
We would move to admit Exhibit 158
No objection.
Will be so admitted.
and play the 911 call.
Apartment number. And there's bullets. 911 operator Sparks, where's your emergency? 3003 Springfield Drive. 3003 Springfield Drive. So what apartment number? Apartment 30. What's going on there, ma'am? Well, something's going on next door, and there's bullet holes all the way through the wall, through our glass, and my boyfriend tried to open the door, and they're out there, the cops are out there yelling to get back to the house. Yeah, you need to... Okay, yeah, you all need to stay inside your apartment. Okay, our glass door is shattered, and I understand there's something going on, but I have a 5-year-old in here, so something needs to be explained to me. Okay, we have an officer-involved situation that is going on, so you need to just stay inside your apartment. Okay, well, is somebody gonna come here when it's all said and done? Because our glass door is shattered. I know you know what's going on. Okay, what is your name? I'm Chelsea. Chelsea, I'm gonna put a run up for you, and as soon as we can, we'll get somebody out here, okay, to come check on y'all. Is anybody hurt? No. Okay, I'm not here. Okay, I'm gonna let them know, okay? Okay, thank you.
So, so that was the first time you called 911,
Yes.
and they told you to stay in the apartment.
Right.
Now, and you had seen the glass all shattered on your back, your patio door. Was it cold that night?
Freezing.
So were you, I guess the air was coming in then through that door.
Yes.
So what did you do?
From there, from the 911 call, or
Yes.
about the freezing? So that was the first call. A little bit of time went by, and that's when I heard somebody. It was a neighbor in apartment 3, or no, apartment 4. I'm sorry, and it sounded like, to me, it sounded like a kid. I thought a kid was crying over there. I didn't know what happened, but they kept saying help, help, and I don't know if it was breathe or something. And I told Cody, I said, there is a child over there, and I think you need to go get the child. And I don't know if he was, at some point in time, he tried to go out he opened the front door. The layout's gone, and they yelled at him really loud to get back in. And I can't remember exactly how each thing happened, but I know when he tried to when the glass was falling down, he pulled the blinds I don't know why he did, and there was a bunch more officers out back holding lasers and guns on him. There was a dog telling him to put his hands through, there was a bullet hole in the glass door, and right underneath it was a really big hole.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and point to where that, you said he was putting his hands out, Cody was?
No, he didn't put his hands out. They directed him to put his hands out, and he wouldn't do it. And I told him, it was just so scary and crazy. I didn't know what was going on. they were screaming at him through the back door, and his adrenaline started. He's telling me to call 911 again. They got the wrong apartment, he said. And so that's the second call that I made. And I remember telling him, I'm like, you better get the back here because they're going to shoot you, is what I said.
Okay, so you called again to 911.
Right.
And have you had a chance to listen to that 911 call?
Yes.
And is that, as you remember it, what you heard on the recording, what you remember saying on that call?
Yes.
With move to admit, play Commonwealth's Exhibit 159?
No objection.
It'll be so admitted.
3003 Springfield Drive. Yes. Is that a house or an apartment there? An apartment. What's the apartment number? Apartment 3. Apartment 3. What's your name and phone number? Chelsea. Number 502-341. What's going on there today, Chelsea? I don't know if they have our apartment confused with whatever is going on, but they're telling him, they're pretty much holding him at gunpoint, saying, get out of the window, our apartment's got bullet holes through it. My son is in here sleeping, and I need somebody to let them know, like, that we need help in here. I don't understand what's going on. Is there somebody inside of your apartment? Me, my boyfriend, and my son. And the dog. Who's inside of your apartment with the gun? Nobody. I'm saying the cops are like through the apartment next to us. And they were really aggressive when we tried to open the door and figure out what's going on. And I don't know what's going on, but just stay inside of your apartment, okay? Okay. Okay. But we just seen them at the door, and they held him at gunpoint. They held who at gunpoint? My boyfriend. They told you what?
The police, I went to the back door. The bullets came through the front wall from the next apartment where the shooting happened, through our wall, and hit our back screen door. And I went to the back screen door just now, and there's police back there with the flashlights, and they're telling me to put my hands out the fucking window.
I'll call over to the dispatcher and let them know. Just stay inside of your apartment, okay? Don't go outside.
All right.
So once again, they told you to stay inside.
Yeah.
Did you, at some point, did the officer come to the door and explain to you all what had happened, or did they come and take photographs?
During everything, I had no idea that it was the police. I thought somebody had gotten a fight in either the parking lot or in the neighbors, or something happened. And when I think that it was either an officer or a detective that came in hours later and asked to take pictures. And I asked the officer if the holes were from the police, and he told me, he said, he kind of just shrugged his shoulders. He was like, I don't know.
So they took in, did they collect the two bullets that had, one bullet on the dining room table? Did they collect that?
Yes, and I think there was also one on the living room floor.
By the shattered glass door?
Yes.
And the bullets that came through, they damaged that dining room table.
Yes.
Now, at some point, did you try to do something about the fact that the sliding door was now gone and the cold air was making it very cold in there? Did you?
So, once, I don't know, daylight came, I opened the door, things had calmed down, and, I mean, I wouldn't say calmed down, but to the point where it was getting freezing in there. Zayden was getting ready to wake up. I kept opening this door. I'm Okay, so the breezeway is right here, and I tried to go out and talk to the landlord because she wasn't answering the phone. I didn't even know if she knew what had happened or anything. And there was an officer standing in the breezeway saying that we couldn't come outside. And it was a crime scene, that nobody could come outside. You would have to use the back shattered, I guess, walk through glass is what she wanted us to do. I have no idea. And so I kept going back in and kept trying. Finally, I guess they had the cones out there and they did everything they needed to do. And I walked up that hill you've seen that I drove through, because I couldn't get a hold of her on the phone. So I took Zayden, and mind you, the door to apartment 3 or apartment 4 is wide open, where a body laid for hours and hours and hours, and I had to block my 5-year-old son, who is wondering. I guess I don't even know what I told him had happened, but I tried to keep it from him forever. And
So you walked where? There's the overhead again, if you want to point to where's the office is.
I walked up this way. All this was blocked off, so I walked this way, and I walked up, and I walked to the landlord's house, to the landlord's office, and tried to get like a shop vac to suck the glass up, or the door boarded or something. I don't know what I was trying to do, but something.
And did they help you out?
It took a long time. They came and put boards on it that evening, and then it stayed that way for quite a while.
Now, that was your furniture in the apartment.
Yes.
You own the furniture. So at some point after all this happened, did you talk to a lawyer about suing the police?
Well, I remember taking a little bit of time, and I think that there was some officers who were there the next couple of days. One of them actually lived in that apartment complex, and we were talking about it, and I learned that it was in fact the police that shot through our apartment. And I was just thinking, looking at the table, dealing with my 5-year-old who's got all these questions, saying he wants to grow up, and I picked him up from his
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. That's not responsive to the question as is.
She's explaining how let her continue with this.
Well,
did you call the police about the damage to your property?
I called Louisville Metro Police Department and asked them if there was a way I could hold someone accountable for their actions because of the questions I was dealing with out of my 5-year-old. My furniture was ruined. My clock was shot. I just threw it in the garbage. And they gave me the number to the Kentucky Bar Association.
So you called first the Louisville police.
Right.
And asked them how you could be compensated for this, the furniture that was destroyed and so forth.
And not to mention they could have killed
And so,
I'm pregnant. And
but
yeah.
was it someone at the Louisville Police Department
That
that
referred
advised you to call the Kentucky Bar Association?
Right.
Okay. Now, and so eventually you did get in contact with a lawyer and you filed a lawsuit. And did you pay the lawyer to file
No.
this? And so did you come up with the amount of money to put in the lawsuit to ask for?
No, I did not.
And so if you do obtain any money, what percentage will the lawyer get?
40%.
And you all moved away eventually from apartment 3.
Yes, we did.
So we have admitted Exhibit 158 and 159.
yes, they're both admitted.
questions I have.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Napper, I just have a couple questions about the timeline here. You indicated that you and Cody went to bed about 10 o'clock,
Yes.
and do you know what time this all happened?
I would say right after 12:40.
And you indicated that it happened, it sounded like a bomb went off, correct?
Exactly.
And could you tell what that was?
After the fact, I mean, I jumped out of bed, I heard the noise, I learned that it was Iran with gunshots altogether.
Altogether, do you have any idea how long that lasted?
I have no idea.
I mean, was it a half hour? Was
No.
it a few seconds?
It was pretty short.
Okay. I think you described it at one time as sounding like Fort Knox, correct?
Exactly.
And that's what woke you up.
Yes.
Did you ever hear any conversation outside while that was going on?
No. I heard that and a neighbor crying.
Okay. And was the neighbor was crying after you heard that Fort Knox, or heard the explosion, correct?
Yes.
How long was that afterwards, do you know?
I couldn't give you an exact minute by minute, but it was after the gunshots.
Okay. Your apartment is to the rear of the apartment where this shooting actually occurred, correct?
Yes.
It adjoins the, sort of the back end of it?
It's right behind it.
Okay. Do you know what time the police, well, you said the police came and wouldn't let you out of the apartment, correct?
Well, the police were there from the beginning.
Well, but I mean, after this was over, you said you tried to leave the apartment and they wouldn't let you go, correct?
The first couple times, no.
And that was up near about sunrise, you said?
I mean, I wouldn't quote me, but it was well after 12:40 at midnight. I mean, after the shooting.
What time did you go up to the manager's apartment?
That was definitely daylight.
Was it morning, afternoon?
Morning. It was, I would say, not very early morning, but it was not afternoon.
Were the police still there at the apartment building?
Different ones were in and out all day.
Do you know what time did you see the last one, if you recall?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. There were so many different people there. I have no idea when the last time I saw one. There was an investigation going on for well into the next day.
Well into the next day? Okay, and you used the term scary and crazy. What did you mean by that?
I meant that I was scared for my life. I was scared for Cody's life. I was scared for my unborn child's life and my 5-year-old's life.
And this was right about the time this was all going on, correct?
What do you mean? Of course I was scared. There was gunshots flying through my apartment.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to determine is right at that moment is when it was pretty wild and crazy, scary and crazy.
It's been crazy ever since it happened. For 2 years now.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
You can step down, thank you.
Thank you.
The Commonwealth's next witness?
Commonwealth closes its case.
All right, thank you. Counsel, would you approach for a moment? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about a 15-minute break, and then I will probably let you go home after that. I just need to talk with the lawyers for a few minutes so that I can give you some further instructions about tomorrow. So it's 10 till 5. Let's take a recess until 5 after 5. Remember the separation admonition.
All rise with the pledge of allegiance.
So my hope was that we would finish the case late in the afternoon and then bring the jury back the next morning, do instructions, closing arguments, send them out about lunchtime so that they'd have the entire afternoon. It looks like that plan's been thwarted a bit. So I don't have any idea how long Mr. Hankison's going to be on the witness stand. Can you at all ballpark what you think in terms of your direct?
Judge, I would think no more than an hour.
No more than an hour. Ms. Whaley or Mr. Finke, could you just ballpark? And I know that's a tough question, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but just to give me some idea. Would you? 45 minutes? So what is your all's thinking? Do you want to? We could have a short day tomorrow. I mean, we have the jury through Friday. We could have a short day tomorrow, have Mr. Hankison on the stand. We could talk about jury instructions after that. And then we could come back first thing Thursday morning, instruct the jury and do closings.
Would work for us, Judge.
Is that fine with you?
I agree with that.
Okay. All right. So I have a few things on in the morning in court. I think what I'll do is have the jury, instead of come back at 9:30 like we've been doing, have them come back at 10, and we can get started then. We may be able to wrap up by lunchtime.
Your Honor, I have a short motion for directed verdict.
Absolutely. I'm going to, well, we can probably go ahead and do that now. I was just going to say we'll do that after the jury comes back and I let them go, but we still have several minutes, so let me, okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, now that the Commonwealth has concluded its case, I think it's incumbent upon them to have established the basic elements of the crime of wanton endangerment. I'm going to read the statute. I know you're familiar with it, but the statute says a person is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree when under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person. In order to understand what that statute means, you have to understand the definition of wantonly, which is also defined that's found in KRS 501.020 paragraph 4. And that definition states that a person acts wantonly with respect to a result or to a circumstance described by statute defining an offense when he is aware of and consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that the result will occur or that circumstances exist. It then goes on to say the risk must be of such a nature and degree that disregard thereof constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of conduct that a reasonable person would observe in the situation. My first comment, Judge, is that I cannot fathom that the legislators who passed this statute back whenever it was enacted ever envisioned a time when it would be used to charge a on-duty police officer who returns fire at someone who has fired at him or his brother partner, and his bullets go astray. There's just no way that was ever the intention of the statute when it was enacted. I think it was more likely enacted to cover situations where somebody is walking down the street and they've got a gun in their possession. They say, let's see if it works, and they go off and shoot it wildly into a house, or for a drive-by shooting situation where a gun is fired at somebody and it misses and hits an occupied structure. That's what wanton endangerment is all about. It's not when a law enforcement officer is doing his duty. But more importantly than that, Judge, when you look at that definition of wantonly, it suggests that in order to be wanton, the actor must be aware of a substantial and unjustifiable risk that exists. He has to have actual knowledge of that risk, as opposed, it doesn't say must be aware of or should be aware of. It says he has to be aware of, which requires that he have actual knowledge of it. And then the actor must consciously disregard that known and substantial unjustifiable risk. Well, here the evidence is absolutely clear that neither Brett Hankison nor his fellow officers knew of the existence of apartment 3 behind apartment 4. So they did not know that they were not aware of any substantial and unjustifiable risk that exists. And beyond that, and Brett Hankison in his statement that was played the other day indicated that he thought they were at a fourplex, meaning he thought there were 2 apartments upstairs because of the 2 balconies, I assume, and two apartments downstairs because of the patios. He had no way, nor did any of the other officers, of knowing what was behind apartment 4. And as we just heard from Miles Cosgrove, and we've heard from other witnesses, there was never any diagram presented to these guys. They were all volunteers who just were sent out to serve this search warrant with no intimate knowledge of what they were getting into. So they were not aware of the substantial and the substantial risk that they were walking into. Secondly, I would submit that in order to consciously disregard a substantial or unjustifiable risk, you have to know it exists. You can't consciously disregard something that you have no way of knowing that it's out there. So that is that part of the wantonly definition that I think is applicable. But then you go to the other part of that definition of wantonly that says that the risk must be of such nature and degree that disregard thereof constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of conduct that a reasonable person would observe in the situation. And I think that leads into the justification statutes that are contained in KRS section 503, because the sections that must be viewed with reference to Chapter 503 would be Chapter 503.030, Chapter 503.040, Chapter 503.050. I'm sorry, I'm saying chapter, I mean section 503.070 and section 503.090. Every one of those is a different type of justification statute, any one of which I think applies to the conduct of Brett Hankison here. They all allow him or justify actions that are done to protect himself or others, which is clearly what the evidence here has established was happening. I would submit, Judge, that if you read those statutes in conjunction with 503.085, that renders Brett Hankison immune from criminal prosecution. That particular statute says if the conduct falls within these statutes, the actor is then immune from prosecution. And I would cite the court to the case of Commonwealth of Kentucky versus William Scott Albright, which is case number 2016 CA-001352-MR. That's an appeals court case that arose here in Jefferson County Circuit Court, and that deals with the immunity that's provided by Section 503.085. In short, Judge, I would submit that when you consider all of the evidence, the wanton endangerment statute, and add on top of that the justification statutes, the state has failed to meet its burden that it's required to meet up to this point in the trial. I don't believe the evidence even arises to the level of probable cause to believe that the offenses of wanton endangerment have been committed here. And for that reason, I would ask the court to grant a directed verdict at this time and take this case away from the jury.
All right, thank you. Ms. Whaley?
Commonwealth disagrees with the defense characterization of the evidence and more specifically the statutes cited from 503. Our position is the defendant is not entitled to any of the justification statutes. I don't think there's a single one in there that the defendant hasn't put forward, but 503.040, execution of public duties, 503.090, he is asked for use of physical force in law enforcement. That's actually limited to a defendant who is acting under official authority, making an arrest. So that has no application here. Choice of evils, we disagree with that justification. More specifically, our position is he's not entitled to the justification under either self-defense or defense of another, because as KRS 503.120 subsection 2 states, when the defendant is justified under 503.050, any of the justifications, self-defense or defense of another, in using force upon or toward the person of another, but he wantonly or recklessly injures or creates risk of injury to innocent persons, justification afforded by those sections is unavailable in a prosecution for an offense involving wantonness or recklessness toward innocent persons, which includes wanton endangerment. And we would, when it comes time for the instructions, as we've already submitted the case of Commonwealth versus Cottle, 2018 Kentucky Supreme Court, where based on this statute 503.120 subsection 2, the defendant was not entitled to a justification instruction. The evidence has shown that the defendant, first of all, I'm not aware of any case, statute, rule, or otherwise that exempts police officers from committing crimes in the penal code. The wanton endangerment statute is no different than any other crime in the penal code. If a defendant, layperson, professional, police officer, or otherwise commits the acts described in the statute, then they are guilty. Firing blindly into the side of the apartment building, into the sliding doors, into the window covered by blinds and curtains, with no target, with no eyes on the threat, is, due to this particular defendant especially, and the amount of training that he's been through for the last 20 years, would obviously, particularly in light of Officer Gelhausen's testimony, the great extent to which the department goes to make sure officers know how to assess a threat, know what is a threat, know that it does require target identification, target isolation before a shot is fired. So the evidence has shown that he is aware of the risk to begin shooting blindly, and that he consciously disregarded that risk when he shot 10 times in the wrong direction into this apartment building. Now, as far as going, as counsel stated, he only thought there were 4. It's clear to anyone looking at the photos and anyone who has been there, there are 4 doors in the lower level facing you at the breezeway of that apartment building. There are 4 doors clearly marked, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In addition, there are 4 doors upstairs, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And in fact, as testimony established, this defendant had a personal interaction with an occupant upstairs who had come out of apartment 8. So it is certainly not it is certainly Commonwealth's position that he full well knew there was an apartment straight ahead as you're standing in that breezeway with number 3 written on it, back to back, adjacent to apartment 4. For the reasons stated and under the law as the court has established, that the Supreme Court has established that the trial court is to take the evidence in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth on motion for directed verdict. So we would ask that the court overrule the motion.
All right, thank you. And you did just state the rule, what the court needs to rely on in making the decision whether or not a motion for directed verdict of acquittal should be granted. To draw all fair and reasonable inferences from the evidence and draw those in favor of the Commonwealth. If the evidence is sufficient to induce a reasonable juror to believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty, a directed verdict should not be given. You know, when you look at the statute 503.120, when under subsection 2, when the defendant is justified under the justification statutes that Mr. Matthews cited in using force upon or toward the person of another, but he wantonly or recklessly injures or creates a risk of injury to innocent persons. The justification afforded by those sections is unavailable in a prosecution for an offense involving wantonness or recklessness towards innocent persons. There's been no testimony that would cause this court to believe that Cody Etherton, Chelsea Napper, or their 5-year-old child constitute anything but innocent persons in this scenario that we have before us. The charge is wanton endangerment, so clearly it encompasses the theory of wantonness. You know, we just recently went to the scene. We saw how close together those apartments are. As you pointed out, Ms. Whaley, and as we've seen from photographs, the numbers are clearly on the doors of those apartments. The officers who went there that night, including Mr. Hankison, knew that this was an apartment building. No reason to believe it wasn't an occupied apartment building. In fact, every reason to believe it was an occupied apartment building because they were there because of a search warrant for Breonna Taylor. So they certainly knew or expected apartment 4 to be occupied. And then, as has been pointed out through the testimony, someone came out of apartment 8 upstairs and had a conversation with Mr. Hankison. So it's 12:30 at night on a weeknight, clearly when you would expect people to be at home in their apartments. We've heard testimony from various officers regarding the shots that were fired, from agents from the FBI regarding the shots that were fired by Mr. Hankison, from the ballistics testing that showed that the bullets, casings came from his gun. We've seen pictures of the shots that went through Cody and Chelsea's apartment, putting them in reasonable fear of serious physical injury or possibly even death as a result of what took place. In reading the statute, the justification statutes do not apply to Mr. Hankison's actions, and so this court will deny the motion for a directed verdict. All right, let's bring the jury. Is Anthony in here? We'll need to get the jury back in. Okay, if you'll bring them back in. Ladies and gentlemen, anything to report from the break? All right, so tomorrow we will gather together again to hear additional testimony in the case. We'll get back together tomorrow morning at 10. I have a few things on my docket between 9 and 10 that I do need to take care of tomorrow. You will hear, as I said, additional testimony. We will not, however, be doing closing arguments tomorrow. And I tell you that because you may want to plan for the day that we have closing arguments and you begin your deliberations, depending on how long you deliberate. And that's just totally up to you, how long it takes you to reach a unanimous decision. You could be here for a while, or a very long while, or a short while, depending on your ability to agree with one another. So we won't have closing arguments until Thursday. And that's the day that if you have children or pets, you might want to get someone to make sure that they're being cared for, just in case you should be here longer than the normal hours that we have had during this trial. But that will not take place tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll get back together at 10. I don't expect that tomorrow will be a very long day for us in court. So I hope you have a nice night. Please remember the separation admonition. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
All rise for the pledge of